So guys, what if Naruto in Venelana Gremory team to protect high school DXD special movie? Rias was a mess, well not physically but emotionally, her life was about to turn for the worst. You see, she wasn't what you call normal, in the biological sense she in fact, a devil. Yes, the Christian devil of hell, well not really, the underworld wasn't fire and brimstone with only eternal torture awaits. Satan knows how she and most of her race hates that stereotype. But, that not the problem. You see, a few thousand years ago there was a war against the Christian God and his angels, as well as the fallen angels that became corrupt in God's eyes and was thrown out of heaven. This war, from what she learnt from history, the three factions gained many losses. The devils lost a good chunk of their numbers as well as their four leaders, the original four Satans. The heavenly angels lost a good number of their people as well as God themselves becoming injured, and from what people believe still injured to this day. And finally the fallen angels, like both factions, lost a lot of their people, but their leaders were for the most part okay, if a bit shook from the war. This war helped shape the world the three factions live in, but the faction it affected most was her faction, the devils. How do you ask? By putting the pieces there for a civil war, one that would change devilkind. The death of the four original Satan left the leadership open with the originals family filling the positions. This was okay at first. When the devils were recovering they were focused on that alone. But like earlier said, a civil war happened, so that didn't last long. Unlike the other faction, the devils were recovering well. Losses were not as bad as the other faction and the number of newborn devils was rising, which was surprising considering that their race was slow breeders. The thing that started the war though was the four Satans, unlike the original, who for the most part a group that keep the devils together and in line. The new Satans were anything but. They were greedy, even devils standard. They were sadistic, going as far to harm their own people, even sometimes family member, for only amusement, as well as letting their lust drive them to such depraved acts that most devils sickened. This and another factor helped start the flames of a rebellion and later civil war, but it was the other factor that started the war, the spark if you will. Their warmongering. You see, after the war the three faction came to agreement which dumbed down to keep off our land and we want kill you. Also fuck you, well not those exact words and with a few exception of course. This one could imagine left the relation with the groups were cold at best, which in turn divide the politics of the devils. Those who wanted to start another war against the two other factions. And those who wanted peace. The two groups were civil at first, pun not intended. They would talk and debate, with a surprising number joining the side of peace, but things turned for a worse when the Satan's replacement made their opinions known, i.e., call them a traitor if they didn't have the same and kill them. This, as you can imagine, caused a lot of anger. The Satans that were unpopular at this point thanks to a more modern mindset starting to this point, and point was the breaking point. The war started, and it wasn't like some would like against any angel, but their own. This war was quick and bloodless compared to the three faction war, but to the devils this war made all the efforts of rebuilding destroyed. The population was lower than the end of the three factions war, and all they had to show for it was a change in leadership. Needed, yes, but a lot of lives lost. This caused a bit of a panic that their kind wouldn't be able to recover. That was until a miracle happened. The evil pieces created by Ajuka Beelzebub, one of the new four Satans, along her brother and comrades, created these objects that could turn other species into devils, in doing helping save their kind from a slow death or invasion. But like all things good and bad, it came at a cost. The pieces worked for most part perfectly, doing what they were made to do, but something came from this invention. Culture shock. The idea that in theory any being could become a devil gave rise to an ideal of superiority. Newly reincarnated devils, the people that became devils through the pieces, became servants as part of peerage and second-class citizens, and a fair amount of those people didn't become devils willingly. This also brought up another ideal thanks the newly reincarnated devils, bloodlines. The original devils had originally descended from the 72 pillars noble families of devilkind. These families still survived and are the elites and nobles, but in very diminished numbers, because out of those 72 families only 33 are alive, some with only one or member in them, and a few of those families have special gifts like her family that hold the power of destruction, which grants the user the ability to destroy anything if given the user is well trained in the art and powerful enough to use it. This started a movement, and Ria's problem in turn, arranged marriages. Ria's problem was being promised by her father to the one of the sons of the Phoenix clan, a clan known for their powerful regenerative abilities. The son she was promised to was Riser Phoenix, a man that disgusted her to no end. Riser was a womanizer and unredeemable pervert, only seeing her as a toy to play with, and that not including her peerage, her friends who he saw as the male part as people to trade of power and the women as playthings. She was so angry, she was promised that she'd have till after she finished college when she could challenge Riser to a rating game, the devil equivalent of a duel with a full peerage to help, but no, Instead, the promise was broken as she was forced to challenge Riser before she was ready. And her prestige wasn't ready. Not ever fighting in a rating game before, only ever sparring with each other, and not having a prestige of 7 instead of the full 16. Satan, 2 of those members have only been devils for a few weeks, and another member couldn't fight because they can't control their power. Against Riser's full and experienced peerage, they had no chance. And this leads up to now. Rias in a wedding dress with the wedding held in a few hours, looking in the mirror, looking at herself in wedding dress, wishing she wasn't. All she wanted to do was cry and lash out. She turned when she heard the door open to see who entered. Her mother, Venelana Gremory. Her mother looked a lot like her, if looking slightly older. Her body could be described as sinfully perfect, with wide hips and large breast, with a flat stomach, wearing a long elegant dress which showed a fair amount of cleavage. One could mistake her for Rias' sister. The only difference between the two was that Rias had red hair and blue-green eyes, while Venelana was a brunette with purple eyes. "What do you want?" Rias said in an aggressive and aggravated tone, not wanting any company at the moment. Venelana could only smile sadly. She was against the wedding from the start, but her husband and Rias' father Zeoticus pushed for it. "I wanted to see my little Rias before the big event." Venelana was trying to not upset any more than she already was, so she picked her words carefully. "Don't you mean the beginning of my own personal nightmare?" Apparently not carefully enough. "Rias, I know you're upset, but..." "Upset? Upset? I am more than upset, I am heartbroken. I feel betrayed, and most of all I am livid," Rias shouted as she quickly stood up and walked towards her mother. But Venelana was not one to be shouted at. "Rias, don't take that tone with me. Just because you upset does not mean you can lash out." "I have every right to lash out. I am about to marry against my will to a monster." Venelana couldn't help but flinch hearing what Rias thought were on her fiancé. That being said, she put on a strong face and spoke. "I know, Rias, but father promised." She was interrupted once more. "Something he didn't have a right to, and what did you do? Just stand there and do nothing. My life is about to be ruined because of some damn promise. For Satan's sake, the man looks at me and my friends as things and fuck toys." "Rias!" Venelana shouted, not wanting to hear any more. It was bad enough this wedding was happening as it is. She just wished to not hear what that man would do to her daughter. She already had enough lost nights' sleep thanks to it. A silence went through the room as the two stared at each other, one with sadness, the other with anger. That was until Rias broke it. "I hate you." Venelana's eyes widened in shock. "Are Rias? You and Dad are hypocrites." Rias interrupted once more, her voice calm but cold. "You both fell in love with each other, and you said fought in the civil war with Sears X-Nay so your children could be free to choose their future." She paused and breathed in. "But you take my future and give it away, and for what? For a chance of a child to be forced upon me that would be called pure. You are going to allow me to be raped by a monster over and over for some stupid idea of a noble cause. You are a hypocrite." Venelana was silent throughout the small speech that Rias gave, with shock and horror running through her, with a growing sense of self-lofting. "Just leave," Rias said with no emotion, but as Venelana looked in her eyes, she could only see fear and sadness. Venelana just nodded, if reluctantly, and turned to the door and was about to leave. A whisper left her, "I am sorry." With that she left the room. Walking down the corridor, she could only think of one thing. "I am going to fix this." No longer in Venelana's mind was this wedding going to happen. She was going to end it, no matter the cost. Too bad it was too late for her to fix this. Rias' location. Rias was once more looking in the mirror, thinking of the conversation. She just felt guilty for what she said. But also not. She groaned as she lowered her head, as her thoughts were cluttered with just about everything: her friends, family, future, and everything else you could imagine. With that said, she decided to do something that seemed offensive to most devils. She prayed not the Judaic God, but to just about anything listening, although it hurt her. Funny, if one was to think about it, any force besides devils could pray to God without repercussion, without harm, even murderers, but devil that are innocent as a nun would be harmed. She would have laughed if she felt like she could, but that didn't discourage her, and so she prayed. "Please, whoever is listening, please help me. I don't know what I want to do. I am scared for me and my friend's future. Please help me. I'll do anything." Silence. She didn't know what she was expecting. She was a dev. "So, young one, you want some help? Well, I think it's only right to help those who need it." Rias turned to see where that voice came from, to see someone she never seen before. Or in this case something. The being reminded her of the human's interpretation of a ghost with a human body upward the waist, where the lower half was a white-shaped mist. But unlike the human idea of a ghost, the lower half wasn't a mist but a blue flame. It didn't help that the more human top half looked a bit different from the more standard human. The being's facial features were most definitively male and human-like, also looking fairly old with their wrinkled face, but some of the features are wrong. The skin was too pale, almost being a pale milky color than in normal skin tone. One of the other things that didn't seem to belong was the fact that the man had horns, not horn like a goat or any animal but ones made from his flesh. But the main thing was two things, or in this case three. His eyes, there were three. The eyes wasn't also what you'd calls normal. The pair of eyes that one would call normal was different, with them being purple with ringed ripples with no whites in the eyes, just the color and shapes. The third eye was different but the similar, with the eye being a solid red with ripples instead of a solid purple with ripples. As Rias stared at the oddity in front, the being started to speak. I know I am not what you would call normal, but could you stop staring please? It is difficult to have a conversation when you're being stared at like a zoo animal. Rias shook her head and stopped staring as her eyes narrowed at the man in front of her. Who, or better yet, what are you? The being smiled. Well, you can call me a spirit, a powerful one that which wants to help you, but as of who I am, well, is it rude to not introduce one's self first before asking for one's name? But then again, it is rude to enter a lady's room uninvited, so I can't talk much. Very well, my name is Otsutsuki Hagoromo. Rias slowly nodded. Spirits were rare and hard to find, but still around if you knew where to look. My name is Rias Gremory. A pleasure. She was uncertain if that was right response, since it not every day a ghost come to say hello. But one this had catched her attention. You said you were going to help me. Hagoromo just nodded. Yes, I said I would, didn't I? That being said, this does come at a cost. Should have expected that. Okay. Before I agree to anything, how are you going to help me and why should I trust you? It's not every day a person helps a stranger. Ah, such a sensible young girl, thinking before acting. Quite rare nowadays. The old spirit said, nodding. Let's start with why you should trust me. First is that although you desperate, I won't force your hand. If you don't want my help, I'll just leave. Second is I'll protect your friend from the consequences of the decision if you do decide to accept my offer. She nodded in thought. Although he didn't have her full trust, she was more open to the idea. For one, like he said, she is desperate, and giving her a choice may be moot but reassuring all the same. Also the fact he was will not only to help her but her friends was a good selling point if one was to look at it from such an angle, given the fact she wouldn't let her friends come to harm for her to be free. What about the deal? What am I meant to do and how you're going to help me? You haven't told me. Yes, I was about to get to that, but you look like you were hard in thought. Her eyebrow twitched. Cheeky old ghost, right? What would I do for you is take you away from this world. Rias gave a flat look. If you think hiding in the human world is gonna work, I'll just tell you now it won't. They have spells to track pure bloods like me. Hagoromo gave a flat look back. True, but that is only for the human world. I never said I would send you there. Her eyes were no longer give a flat look but one of surprise. But the only other worlds are heaven and the other pantheon's worlds, and they don't allow devils into them. The ghost closed his eyes and nodded. Also true, but again, I never said those OD hide you in those worlds. I would take you to a place where no devil knows about, or any pantheon for that matter. Well, except one, but they don't have any power there beside two who can only do so much there. Rias was in shock from what she just heard but got worried when he told her that a pantheon knew about the world. Worried that they might reveal where she would be or worse, kill her. Which pantheon? The Shinto, but the only two god that have power there are the Shinigami and the exiled minor god Jashin. She could help but question who the Satan is. Jashin? So unimportant and forgotten in these worlds that he a non-factor, but in the world you would be going to, the god of blood and murder. Rias couldn't help but shiver. A god of murder and an exiled one didn't scream friendly. Would they reveal who I am, or worse? Hagoromo shook his head. They won't care. Never have. The Shinigami cares only for the soul he ferries and rarely listens to the rest of the Shinto gods, let alone cares, and Jashin would most likely keep you alive in a secret just to spite the rest of the pantheon if they cared. Rias sighed in relief. At least she would be safe. Okay, the offer sounds tempting, but you haven't told me what you want. The spirit looked Rias in the eyes which held many emotions: hope, fear and sadness. What I want is one thing, but three things are required. The thing I want and need is for you is to help a boy. He will be your age when you go to that world. I fear he may lose his way without someone's help. The second thing, and what is require, is that you are de-aged, for a lack of better terms, not to the age of a child, though just 2 years to the age of 15 in the final requirement. Rias was silent throughout the conversation. The first two things she'd be okay with. A bit curious about the boy but gained a slight worry at the pause. The final requirement is that you become human. Her eyes widened in shock. Become human? Hagoromo nodded. Yes. The world I would take you to would be unsafe if you stayed a devil. You would be killed, or worse if were discovered to not be human. The humans of that world are far stronger than the ones you know, stronger than most if not all of the species that you know, barring gods. But then again, there are a few cases that challenge that too. Rias was close to hyperventilating after hearing that. Was this how her servants felt when they were asked to become devils? You will keep a fair amount of your abilities so you're not powerless, but thing like teleportation and traditional spellcraft will be lost to you. That said, you will be more powerful and you will be able to gain access to abilities that make your magic look like weak. She couldn't help but wonder, would I lost my powers of destruction? It was something special to her, that power. Even after everything she said to her mother, she didn't want to lose one of the thing that connected them. No, you won't. It will be changed, but still there. So Rias, what is your choose? A deafening silence made its way through the room as Rias was left to her thoughts until Rias began to speak once more. My friends will be safe and I'll be safe also. Hagoromo nodded as silence made its way back for a few minutes till Rias spoke again. I'll do it. The old ghost smiled. Thank you, Rias. For what it's worth, I am sorry you had to make that kind of choose. The soon-to-be free girl smiled if Abbott sadly, then something popped into her mind. Is it alright if I say goodbye to my peerage, since by what you said they won't be coming with me? Hagoromo's smile turned sad. I am sorry, Rias, you cannot. It would be too much a risk. That being said, I would recommend writing a letter for your goodbyes. Rias nodded and went to grab a piece of paper and a pen. As she got them, a thought ran through her head. Should I apologize to mother? While she just had a brutal argument with her mother, she still cared for her no matter how much she said she hated her. She now had an idea what to write, as she sat at the dresser table where she was looking in the mirror earlier. As she finished writing the letter, she folded the paper and put it on the table. She turned to look at the ghost. So what now? Now, it is time to go. Hagoromo made waving motion with hand as a gray-black portal started to open. Rias stared at the portal. So this is it. Yes, I would recommend not taking too long. I feel that someone may be coming. Rias nodded and started to walk to the portal with a steady pace, but stopped before entering. She turned her head, looking back at the room. I guess this is goodbye then. She walked. As she entered, the portal started to close, leaving Hagoromo to himself, where he spoke to himself. No, young one, this is a see you later. With that, he faded like he was never there. The room was empty, silent. Knock knock. Mistress Gremory, you presents has been requested. From outside the room a feminine voice came, which was met by silence. Mistress Gremory? The woman entered the room to reveal one of the servants of the Gremory clan. The servant looked around the empty room, noticing the folded letter on the dresser. She went over and grabbed it. She unfolded the letter. She gasped and ran out with letter in hand. Venelana's location. Venelana was looking for her husband, who was currently greeting their guests for the wedding. As she weaved through her guests, she found her husband talking to Lord and Lady Fenix. Good, she could make this easier. As she walked up to them, she spoke. Lady and Lord Fenix, husband. The three turned to see her. Zeoticus smiled and started to speak. Ah, Venelana, my dear, how my little girl doing? Is she ready for the big event? Zeoticus was a handsome man with green-blue eyes, long red hair, a trimmed and stylish beard, and his build was thin but muscular. The man was a head-turner for most women, with personality to match. That said, many who knew him would say one thing about him that stuck out like a sore thumb. He was very prideful. His pride was said to be one of the most defining features about him. That being said, there is a reason this personality trait stuck out, is that to those who knew him long enough helped give an understanding of other traits he had. His stubbornness, for one. Venelana shook her head. She didn't need to think about this, she need to fix this problem. That is what I want to talk to you about. Zeoticus raised an eyebrow as his smile turned into a frown. Is something the matter, Venelana? Lord Fenix, is it alright if you and your wife give us some privacy for a moment? The lord of the Fenix clan nodded and was about to leave until Venelana stopped them. That won't be necessary. In fact, they are going to listen what I am about to say. Venelana said with some uncertainty. She seemed different from how she usually does. The wedding is not happening. The engagement is off. That made the group reel in shock. What? No, it isn't. What has gotten into you, Venelana? Zeoticus shouted fairly loudly. Bring attention to the argument. Some sanity. Don't you see our daughter is in pain? She hate the man we are trying marry her to, for Satan's sake. She said she hated us. Venelana shouted back, bringing more attention to them. She was most likely just exaggerating. She was not exaggerating. Venelana interrupted. You weren't there. Her voice, her eyes. All those emotions aimed at me. All because you decided to do something we had no right doing. As the argument got worse, a man came through the crowd. The supposed man of the hour, Riser Fenix. The man was wearing a white suit which hugged his body, showing off the few muscles he had. The man's facial could be described as handsome if it didn't emit an aura of I am better than you that made you want to punch it. Oh, and the very angry look on his face. He walked to Venelana with purpose as she noticed him coming towards her. And when he arrived, he made that purpose known. What is this I hear? Something that by right belongs to me being taken away. I was promised. Venelana narrowed her eyes. What right do you have? You're Your father and my husband broke your promise to my daughter, so I would have thought that you would mind another breaking promise. As Riser's face became angrier, he was about to say something till the loud sound of someone slamming the door open, revealing a maid who looked out of breath. "Oh, for love of the Mao, what is that maid doing?" said an aggravated Zeoticus. "Lord and Lady Gremory, there's an emergency," said the maid in worry. "What emergency?" Riser said coldly. "Mistress Gremory, I am missing." The room was stunned silent till Venelana said the one thing on everyone's mind. What? "She's missing, my lady. The only thing I found in her room was a letter," the maid said as she gave Venelana the letter. As Venelana grabbed the letter, she was full of worry, and as she read the letter, that worry felt justified. No. To anyone who is reading this is a goodbye. I don't know when anyone will find this. Maybe minutes from now or hour, but at either case it does not matter. It'll be long gone. To my peerage, my friends, I am sorry I couldn't say goodbye. It hurt me just as much not being able to, but for all it's worth, at least I know you will be safe, as promised by the person who has helped me. And to my mother, I am sorry for what I said earlier, but I am not marrying that man. I still love you, but I will be free no matter how high the cost is. Please don't look for me, you won't find me. Rias Gremory." She dropped the letter, letting out tears, and dropped to her knees like the letter as her husband grabbed the letter and read, and when he finished his eyes were wide with many emotion, the most preferent. Panic. Well, don't just stand there, find her. Too bad he would not find her. Venelana was a mess. It has been 4 months since Rias ran away, and since then hers and everyone connected to Rias' life was turned upside down. After the search started, there was hope of finding her quickly. And like the hope of finding her quickly, that hope ended quickly. After weeks of searching, no sign of her could be found in the underworld or the human world. No tracking spell could find her, no matter how powerful the spell was or how good the tracker looking for could not even find a hair of her anywhere. This led to several things that would not only change her life but damn near every devil that exists today. Her son, the de facto leader of devilkind Sirzek Lucifer, got angry. Now this wouldn't be cause for alarm usually, since he is usually a calm if silly person. More often than not, whenever he's got angry, nothing bad has ever really happened, besides a shouting match or two with the said person who angered him, also more often than not him apologizing for shouting. For Mao's sake, there was a rumor that her son wasn't even a devil, since he has never really had a sin he was aligned to, like lust or greed. But now she could say that he did, and she wished he didn't, because his sin? Wrath. After Sirzek found out was missing, he became furious, so much so no one had ever seen him so angry before, even in the war. He stormed his way to her and his father, shouting at both of them and nearly attacking them even, for letting that farce of a wedding ever be thought up, let alone nearly happen like it did. She took the anger aimed at her with acceptance. She felt like she held a good amount of the blame. Her husband, on the other hand, was being stubborn as a bull. Zeoticus was not so upset or accepting of Rias running away. Feeling that she abandoned some form of duty to devil kind, he felt a lot of anger towards her, although he still loved her, but he was not going to stop the wedding. Hell, he said he would personally make sure that it would happen. Much to the anger of her and her sons, this started an argument between the three which lasted for hours, which basic boiled down to a shouting match of "it's happening" and "it isn't happening." That was until Sirzek ended it. He left after figuring shouting no wasn't going to cut it, and told Venelana and her husband to watch the news in a few days, after a few days of arguing between the two with them, until they had got a message to watch the news to see whatever Sirzek had planned. And oh boy, he did not disappoint. A conference was called with an important message to the people, and with news that his sister running away from her wedding and was missing. Many people were listening, and when he made his announcement, many cried out in joy, while a fair amount of noble were shocked and angered. He made arranged marriages illegal. In his words, these marriages were hurting devil kind than helping, using his sister, and several would be copycats that followed Rias' example after learning what she did as cause for this decision, and also in essence ending the argument. While Venelana was the most happy she'd been in a while, Zeoticus was furious. Not long after the announcement, he gathered several like-minded individuals, that included Riser but not his family. Which all amounted to nothing other than showing why Sirzek was the strongest out of the 4 Satans. In other words, he had beaten the crap out of them. And after that act, she made a decision that she still debates if she did was the right decision. She left him, no, not as in divorce but separation. She still loved him, but with his stubborn pride she felt like this was the only way to get the message across, that if tries what he want, not only will he fail and lose his daughter, he will also lose her. So she left the manor that she had so many memories in with family to her birth family, the Bael clan with Rias peerage. Ah yes, Rias peerage: Akano, Issei, Kaneko, Kiba, Asia, and finally Gasper. Each of them felt differently about Rias leaving, with their own way of dealing with it, even if wasn't the best way, but one emotion ran through them. Failure at first. Akano felt like she was abandoned and betrayed. She lashed out at anyone who tried to help her at first until she calmed down, where she felt like she didn't try hard enough to fight for her friend. With that, she vowed to find her friend and to get strong enough so nothing like that would ever happen again. Kaneko felt like she failed Rias when she needed her the most. She thought back when she was young and about all of the bad things that happened to her before she met Rias and all the things that happened after she became a member of Rias' peerage. As well as the vow that she would never in such a bad position again, as well as to protect Rias with all her might. But when push come to shove, she fell so easily. She failed her friend and now she was gone. More often than not she was hiding, rarely talking to anyone and only being seen at meals, with leaving as soon as she was finished. It was only her desire to reunited with Rias that she didn't do anything drastic. Kiba felt angry. He always felt that he was getting stronger, but this showed him he wasn't as strong as he thought. And so he got angry at Riser for his obsession with Rias. He got angry at her parents for forcing her to run. He was angry at her for abandoning them, and most of all angry with himself for being a fool at thinking himself strong. Thanks to this line of thinking, he wanted to bring her back to show he could become stronger, to become strong enough to avenge everyone he cared about in his tragic past. Helpful but selfish, Gasper. Oh, little Gasper was devastated when he learnt the news. He always felt like he was a burden for Rias, with him unable to control his powers and him being pretty much sealed in his apartment 24/7. That was until after Rias ran away and was given a device from Sirzek that would help him control his power. Now all he could do was cry, feeling like he could have helped, but didn't. And then there were the newest members of Rias' peerage, Issei and Asia. Issei was in shock when he heard about Rias' disappearance. He was going to try and rescue but was too late after he transformed his left arm to one of a dragon, to hold a holy relic which he believed could harm Riser without activating his regenerative ability. But when he arrived, he was confused to see that the pre-wedding gathering in a state of panic. He asked why everyone was panicking, and then he was told the news. And all he saw was red. He attacked Riser, blaming him for Rias' disappearance, doing a good amount of damage to Riser before a group of high-class devils stopped him, after he beat up several of them too. He would have been executed if it wasn't for Sirzek vouching that he was loyal to his master and only doing what he thought necessary for her to return. Which was true in his mind anyway. He knew that for all of Rias' faults, she was a great person that many people judged without thinking. Yes, he knew Rias revived him after he was killed, and he knew she was watching the events. But he also learned that if she acted to stop his death, it could have started a war. The same could be said about Asia when she was held by those fallen angels a small while back. If Rias decided that not to help him rescue Asia, they would probably be left for dead. All to keep the unstable peace that is the only thing that is preventing devils' kind high chance of extinction, which most others would have done in a heartbeat, but she helped in the end even with this high possibility. That said, it saddened him to hear people call her selfish, because in his eyes she was more giving than most would, and this act, while could be called selfish in his mind and probably many others. This wasn't, since he believed that marriage should be for love, not for whatever dumb reason this would be marriage happened. Also, with a fair few nobles calling her selfish, he became less perverted and more angry, even snapping at people for little things. He had become distant, but there was one thing that kept him focused. To get back Rias, no matter how hard it was. Asia had a similar gratefulness for what Rias had done for her in recent history. She knew Rias didn't have to revive her, since as she was a former nun, one of Devilkind's enemies, many would have left her to rot. Also, the fact Rias wasn't as cruel to her was just as shocking, since as she said just she was a former nun. She was at least expecting a cold shoulder, but Rias went out of her way to make feel accepted, and in doing so showing that all she was taught about devils in her time at the church was false. So when she learnt that Rias was missing, it was heartbreaking for her. To know one of her few friend, no matter how recently made, was missing. What made her feel worse though was the fact she didn't fight. She was more of the medic of the team and was uncomfortable fighting, and instead of Rias forcing her to train in the art of fighting, she made her comfortable and not force her to fight and allow her to focus on being the team's medic, which did little in the long run, which made it all the worse. But unlike the others, she wasn't as broken down as the rest of them. Perhaps it was thanks to the fact she had similar grief thanks to her being kicked out of the church, but that didn't stop her desire to find her friend. So Rias' peerage all had a desire for her to return like Venelana and her son, if for slightly different reasons. But right now Venelana had a headache. Why do you ask? Well, because just about everyone who both did and didn't want to see we're here. Arguing. Loudly, with such a creative vocabulary too. I'll tell you again, you had no right to make that law, shouted an aggravated Riser. From what she heard after Rias' departure, he was near unbearable to just about everyone, including his family and peerage. She looked around the room to see the guests of the hour, the Phoenix clan and Riser's peerage, her husband, her son and his family, and finally Rias' peerage. Originally, this little get-together was meant to be a bit of an update on the search, But Zeoticus invited the Phoenix clan for them to update them too, as well as to try to convince his son to change the law back to its original state. As she looked at her guests, she noticed that the whole of the room had an uncomfortable atmosphere, and it wasn't because of the argument in front of them. Well, a little bit, but it wasn't the main cause. She looked at her daughter-in-law Graphia Lucifuge, who was at the moment comforting her grandson Millicus Gremory, who missed his aunt greatly, barely understand what happened and why Rias ran away. She also saw the Phoenix family looking quite uncomfortable. And from the rumors she's heard, quite understandably so. To her knowledge, after Rias' disappearance, many people started pointing fingers on who blame. At first her family was blamed, but when news came out about her trying to stop the wedding, the blame was quickly switched to the Phoenix clans. This was exacerbated by Riser's no history of womanizing and his behavior toward Rias in every known meeting that they had. As one could imagine, this was not good for their reputation, especially since Riser's recent behavior has not been the most shining examples of how a noble family should act. He was acting more of a man-child than anything else. There was also a rumor that Lord Phoenix was contemplating ending the engagement to save face and to punish Riser for his recent actions, but she also heard that her husband had been pressuring him to keep the engagement on, saying that all of this will blow over and all of the problems of now will be repaid later with greater rewards. The idiot, she then sighed, noticing the two peerages glaring at each other. Well, most of them anyway. A fair portion of Riser's peerage looked guilty or just plain uncomfortable. After recent events, Riser's peerage had a few problems, mainly with Riser's recent frustrations being taken out on them and whoever was close to him, which in turn made them feel guilty for beating them and forcing their king to leave, or angry that Rias ran away and left them to deal with the mess. Her thoughts were brought back to reality when her son started to speak. I have every right. Do you know the problems that these arranged marriages have brought? There has been several attempts of would-be brides and or husbands running away, for Mao's sake. There was a young devil escape into a church and nearly killed because she didn't want to marry some centuries older noble. Sirzek said with a calm voice with an undertone of anger. From what Venelana could tell, he wanted a chance to beat him up again. She could see Riser was about to say something, but he was interrupted by Lady Phoenix. While I am sure everybody here would hate to interrupt your conversation, were we not invited to discuss what information has been gathered on Mistress Gremory's disappearance? Venelana sent a grateful look to her, who gave a small nod of acknowledgement. She as well was against the marriage, if only for different reason, even if she didn't know why. Right, Sirzek said as he cleared his throat as Riser grumbled and took a seat, unhappy but listening. Well, from what little we know, Rias had helped to escape, but we believe they might have been protecting her peerage and maybe our family. That caught all of their and how would someone be protecting us? Said a curious Akano. Well, I've asked the people investigating Rias' disappearance, but there has been 2 attempts on all our lives. This made the whole room surprised, especially Akano and the group. So much so that Issei made it know. What do you mean someone tried to kill us twice? And why keep it a secret? Because you know, someone tried to kill us. Sirzek scratched the back of his head with a sheepish look. Well, I didn't know how to tell you the news for one. His face became serious. Also, there was something else which has me and the search team worried, so much so I made it a secret. One of Issei's eyebrows twitched with that response and decided to respond with a bit of sarcasm. And what in hell's name was so important that you keep it a secret? Well, the fact one of the devils has lost all his magical power is enough for a secret. How about 3? That brought a look of fear to almost everyone in the room, except for Asia, Issei and Millicus, who didn't understand the situation since one was too young and the other 2 were relatively new and didn't understand. Huh? Lost power? Sirzek nodded. Yes, lost power, not locked but gone, disappeared, has nothing left. The 2 assassins had lost their power as well as the man who hired them. Issei got curious. How is this a bad thing? I mean, they tried to kill us, and how bad is it being as strong as a human a bad thing? Sirzek shook his head while the others gave him a look that only be described as the hell is he saying. Issei, they have no power. Even normal humans have a very low level of magical power, even if they don't have it or know how to use it. But they have none. 0. Zilch. There has been rarely recorded events anything surviving without it, but these people have. Issei was in shock hearing that, and so was everyone else, but for different reasons. They survived? Why did you not just kill them? Venelana said with no small amount of shock. Sirzek nodded. Information mostly, and from what we have been able to gather from those 3, it was the same person who did that to them. And who is able to do that? Sirzek just sighed and shrugged. We have no idea. Although we have a good idea what he looks like. He went silent. By the look on his face, he didn't know what to say. The room stared at him. Well, are you going to tell us what this man looks like? Well, how do you want me to tell you, bluntly or delicately? This made everyone give a questioning look, with Issei deciding to answer. Well, how about you just tell us? I don't think they need this level of thought. There was nods of agreement around the room as Sirzek gave a flat look. Well, don't say I didn't warn you. The person is a two-horned, three-eyed ghost. Now the room was looking at him like he was insane. Well, that's just great. Huh. He wondered if this is what that person felt when he gave him the info, and him nearly condemning him to an insane asylum. He really needs to buy him a gift to say I am sorry. Venelana started to speak, a bit unbelieving from the tone of her voice. A horned Triclops ghost. Sirzek, are you sure that right? I mean, I know ghosts exist, but they are quite rare and more often than not don't have much in the way of power. Also the fact that the description of the sounds far-fetched. I know, but I've checked multiple times, and a few more times after that. Look here, the situation, we have an unknown that can do the impossible and we have no clue where he is. I am just thankful we have so idea who we are dealing with. So any idea where to look? Not a clue. This made grumbles and sighs go around the room as Issei standed up and started walk to Sirzek. So what can we do to help with the search? I mean, we aren't going to sit around all day. Sirzek started to smile, but that became a frown after Riser started to speak. Oh please. How low-rank runt like you going to find her? Even the most skilled can't find her. Riser of Cause wanted to find her even if it was for less than noble deeds, but he just wanted to take shots at Issei for the attack that he gave him. Issei narrowed his eyes and scowled at the man. Oh, like you could do any better. Beside, at least I am trying to find her. Besides, it not like I could ask where Ria-senpai is. You know, you could actually do that. The room turned to the unknown voice to see. Ahhhhh. Ghost. Shout a spooked Issei, with everyone being surprised by the unexpected guest as well. That was until they recognized who they were looking at, a three-eyed, two-horned ghost. You. Where is my daughter? Shouted an angry Venelana as her magic came off her in waves. And everyone soon followed suit, looking like an angry lion about kill a ant that just bite them. But for the ghost, he looked as calm as a father looking at a child throwing a fit. She's safe, but I came to see you. Given how I promised to protect her peerage, I would only think it right to talk. Oh, is that so? So you not only kidnapped my daughter, you think you can just come here and think you can have a nice little chat? Well, let me tell you, not happening now. Where is my daughter? As I said, safe, and if you think I will just tell you because you told me to, well, I apologize, because I will not, he said with authority in his voice. He was then hit by a lance of dark destructive energy. Didn't hurt him or anything really, but it did anger him a small bit. He turned his head to the person who just attacked him to see Sirzek with his hand stuck out smoking. Sister. Where? The spirit narrowed his eyes again. I am not telling. Now if you just. He was attacked again, this time by Ria's peerage. Enough. With that the room became heavy. No one was able to move or barely breath. They felt like a mountain was just forced upon their shoulders. But that wasn't the worst of it. They also felt no see their own deaths. If you want to see Rias, you will not fight, you will talk. The pressure started to disappear as relieved themselves as everyone by breathing as much air as one could. The ghost eyes softened. Grafia-san, I would recommend going to your son. He is frightened by what he just experienced. Her eyes widened as she saw her son shaking. She ran over and started comforting him. He gave a regretful look at the child, even if the mother and said child didn't notice. He hated having to do that. He then looked around to see everyone seated, if a bit tense. Then again, after what he did, could he blame them? Ahem, well, now that everyone is settled, I think introductions are in order. My name is Hagoromo Otsutsuki. I had hoped to introduce myself under more civil circumstances, but with how things have been here in recent history, I thought it best to introduce myself quickly. Venelana and her husband gained a worried look. Is she okay? Is my daughter hurt? Venelana said with no small amount of worry. She is fine, happy even, but that's not why I am here. The reason why I am here is because of the situation that I helped create. Sirzek narrowed his eyes and said, the political crisis. Hagoromo nodded yes. I was at first only protecting Ria-san's peerage from harm as a promise, but when the assassins came I learnt that a fair amount of nobles don't like what I did and are trying to find a way to pay me back for my actions, interrupted an aggravated Sirzek. I know this, so what has this got to do with this talk? Hagoromo looked at Sirzek. Well, it should be obvious. If noble are angry at you and are trying to hurt you and your family, then my promise to Ria-san is in danger. So I need to fix this. That's why I am offering you all a deal. A small amount of whispers went around the room when Venelana spoke up. Oh. And what deal is that? A chance to see her again. And the shouting started, most of joy like a child at Christmas, or demanding, take a guess who. But he was not going to get a headache, so he said enough. The room went quiet again, but Hagoromo could see nearly everyone had questions and he had a good guess what questions, so he would answer before they had a chance. Before you ask, No, I will not be bringing Rias here, you will be going to her. Also there will be one rule when you go to her. Most of the people in the room were quiet, with the exception of Sirzek, Issei and Milikas, who were whining like young children, or in Milika's case his age. Hagoromo couldn't help but smile. It was good to see them less angsty. He shook his head and focused. The first is that you cannot force Rias back, or can you trick her back home? It will be her choose, and that is final. This of course made a few people disagree. And why can we not? She my daughter and she ran away, she should be here, not wherever she is now, asked Zeoticus with an almost political tone, trying his best not to anger the being in front of him but trying to get what he wanted. And Hagmoro could see right through it like glass. And if parents always did what was best, then the world would have no problems. But what do I know, it's not like your children have had any hardships. Oh wait, and so he would not throw any punches. Zeoticus frowned and let off a small growl sound. He could see it, his plan wasn't going to work. He could also see his wife glaring at him, most likely out of the belief that this being might not let them see their daughter if they piss him off. His thoughts though were broken when Hagmoro started to speak once more. There is also an offer I will give you in the future. You will be given a choice in the future that will be important. You can choose whatever you wish, but if you break the first rule, that choice will be taken from you and there will be a greater punishment too. There were looks and mumble exchanged around the room until Issei spoke up. Anyo, what is the choice? You'll learn it when you meet Rias. Issei's head dropped. That said, I will not be taking you now. Sirzek and a fair few others narrowed their eyes. And why not? The ghost gave a flat look. To prepare, I am certain that you're going to spend more than a day there. You would want some things to wear. Unless of course you want to wear the same thing you're wearing now, and that not including your responsibilities. Imagine if you just disappeared for even just a few days, the amount of chaos that would happen. This got some of the more politically important people were blushing for forgetting their jobs for a minute, as well as the less politically orientated few cringing at the thought of the unclean clothes. Hagoromo gave a slight cough to grab the others' attention. Well, I'll be off. If you need me, I will know. I will see you in a week. Wait, said Sirzek quickly. One question first. How did you take those people's magical power without killing them? The ghost looked at Sirzek for a second, then closed his eyes. It's simple. I just took it, since power is what everyone take for granted. The devil narrowed his eyes. That's not an answer, that's a cause. Now can you please tell us? Hagoromo just gave a small smile. But the answer is clear. But if you're having trouble, don't worry, for you will learn it. Before Sirzek or anyone else could say, Hagoromo faded. After he had faded, there was sighs released around the room, both of aggravation and relief. Soon after, a laugh could be heard from Sirzek. Excuse me, Sirzek-sama, why are you laughing? Asked a curious Asia. I am laughing because all the trouble we went through, we only had to ask. Now if only everything else was that simple, he said with a light chuckle at the end, earning a few smiles, a few grumbles and 2 scowls. As Sizich stopped laughing, he began to stand up and speak. Well, we have a week to prepare. Let's get prepared. They had things to do. 1 week later, it had been a busy week for many of the group, with a fair amount of arguments and worries along the way. For Rias Peerage there was little to no trouble, since only Issei was living with his family, with Asia staying with him, and with a bit of help and magic they were able to change a few memories to that where the club was going for a small time to somewhere on a school trip, so the Peerage only had to pack and think of what to do to get Rias back. The others on the other hand had a few more problems to deal with. Sirzek had to deal with the other Satans, which after hearing had their own opinions about the deal. Mostly them being against it. After a few arguments, agreement was struck that he had to have a temporary replacement while he was away, mostly to deal with the paperwork that they didn't want, and that they be there when Hagoromo take him Rias, even though they were staying. Worrying for Sirzek, since he didn't know how Hagoromo would react. Something he told them about, but they were not taking any chances and he had no choice but to agree. He also had to deal with his wife and son, since as Grafia and him were divided on if they should bring their son along, mostly because there was a lot of unknowns. Their son really wanted to go, sure, but they were more worried about his safety, since if they left him here he could be harmed by one of the groups trying to harm him and his family. Or if they took him, he could be harmed by any unknown threat if Hagoromo took them somewhere dangerous. Neither choose was not a pleasant idea, the two parents, but after a while they had decided that it would be best if they brought him along, if only for the fact that they would be able to protect him themselves than leave him to the care of their servants. Then finally there was Venelana and her husband Zeoticus, who only had one problem. Each other. This was mostly because Venelana did not want the Phoenix clan to come along for the trip and had tried to talk them out of coming. This one could imagine made Zeoticus less than happy. This started another argument between the two, with Venelana worrying that bringing the Phoenix family might cause Rias to become more distant from her family, Zeoticus believed on the other hand that bringing them was their duty for Rias running away. The arguments got to a point where Hagoromo returned and said that the Phoenix family would come and that was final. This upset Venelana for the most part till she had a small talk with Lady Phoenix where they discussed the issues that worried her. She was fine with them going, for the most part. But after all of everything it all led to this moment in the same room that held them all, with everyone who came that day there, including all 4 of the Satans who came to see them off. And to see this possible threat, so, any idea how we are meant to call this old ghost? Because I would much rather be home right now, a male voice said in an uninterested tone. The man was fairly handsome with green swept-back hair, blue eyes, pale skin and a fair-toned build. He was laying down on a psychologist's chair that appeared to have mechanical legs. He was also fiddling with a device in his hand with a screwdriver. Ah, come on. Just think we get an almighty powerful ghost. Now stop being such a downer. Another spoke, this time female with an excitable and anime ESCE manner. This woman was peculiar to say the least, appearing to be younger than most of the group. She looked like she was in her mid-teens with black twin-tailed hair, light pink eyes and a healthy if dipropionate body. In other words, she appeared to be well endowed, no surprise for devil kind. But what made her the odd though is the fact she was wearing a pink magical schoolgirl outfit, complete with a magic wand. Yeah, not gonna touch that topic. Ah, why bother, it just some ghost. Now can you quiet down, I am trying sleep, a third voice, male once more. This man was plain in features compared to the others. The only thing that made him stand out compared to the rest of devil kind was his height, his goatee beard and his sheer baldness which you could see one's reflection on, but the thing that brought attention to him was his radiating lazy aura. These 3 were 3 of the 4 Satans, Ajuka Bleazelbub, Seraphal Leviation and Phalabium Emotus respectively. And right now they were waiting on their guest to arrive. Oi Sirzek-kun. When is the ghost coming? Nerdy Chan and Lazy Chan are getting impatient. While the 2 voiced their opinion of Seraphal's comment, Sirzek turned toward them, looking away from the conversations, bickering in excitement of what was soon to happen. I have no clue. I haven't heard a Hagoromo-san in the week. The only people who have are my parents and he didn't talk about times, besides that he would take us today. There was sighs and gowns from the group of 4, they were not patient for different reasons. How did you meet this guy again? Didn't you say that Issei Gaki made so sarcastic remark about asking? So, why not just ask, said Phalabium not moving from his position, face down on one of the sofa suites. I don't think that will work again, Sirzek said flatly. I beg to differ. Oh Satan's balls, not again, shouted Issei from the scare the old ghost gave him. This also alerted everyone to Hagoromo's presence. I see that everyone is here as well as a few guests, Hagoromo said as he looked around the room seeing the 3 other devils who were staring at him. Yes, these are the rest of the 4 Satans as you can guess. They asked to be here to make sure nothing funny happened. Is that okay? Sirzek spoke nearing a whisper at the end, worrying that he might take offense and leave, losing their chance to Rias. But Hagoromo was an understanding person. I can understand. I am an unknown to you and my first impression has only been positive to one of your people. Now that is all said and done, can those going with you go into the center of the room? As the people in the room, the group moved in the center of room excluding 3 of Satans, Sirzek couldn't help but question. Is there anything important we should know? We're already going into a lot of unknowns, so I think that we would like even a small amount of information. Hagoromo looked away from the assembling group and looked at Sizich and let out a hum of acknowledgement. Yes, you bring up a good point. Right, I will not be dropping you off in the wilds, so you won't have to worry about animals, as well I'll drop you off fairly close to Rias' location. That all said, I have one piece of advice for you. Oh? And what is that? Don't anger the locals, they can be difficult if provoked. Sirzek gave a nodded with a face of professionalism, listening to the warning like Angel would listen to God. He was not going to take any chances. As Sirzek walked to the group, he grabbed his luggage that he brought for the trip and saw that the group had bags and suitcases ready to go. He could also see the faces of the group had a look of nervous determination, or in Reiser's peerage case just plain worry. Say what you want, no matter brave you or the unknown, take a special kind of courage. As he arrived and went next to his wife and son, he gave his wife a loving look and held her hand and spoke to Hagoromo once more. Okay, we are in the center of the room now. What? Are you going to cast a spell to take us there? The old ghost nodded kind of yes, but word of warning, this going to be a bit bumpy. Bumpy? Wait, could this kill us? Yelped a worried Issei. Sure, he wanted to get to Rias, but he did not want to be chunky salsa in the progress. Oh no, it's perfectly safe, just, well, best to cast this spell, he said with some speed at the end with his middle eye glowing. Wait. What? And before anyone could act, a rip in time-space appeared under their feet. As they fell, there was a multitude of screams and shout of surprise, and in only 2 seconds the group was gone, and so was the screams, leaving only the ghost and the 3 devil in the room. Serafal was the first to talk. So Ghosty-kun, how long till they return? A week? A month? Hagoromo closed his eyes. That will theirs to decide. Serafal raised an eyebrow. Theirs to wait, what do you? And before she could finish he started to fade, and in a second all who was left in the room was the 3 devils. There was only silence for a minute until, "Okay, I am not doing that paperwork, Lazy-kun, you're doing it." And his reply, "Oi Venelana Pav, unknown location." Venelana felt like her head was a bomb site that just went off and of her brain cell fell victim. She could remember falling into, well, she had no idea, but she could tell it was turbulent, so much so that she blacked out as she felt a small thud and heard screaming, not of the group she was in. As she opened her eyes she could see a white ceiling with no form of decoration. As she moved to get up to inspect further she felt something stopping her. She looked down and saw one of her wrists was handcuffed. As she tried to remove it she felt her powers were blocked somehow. She let out a sound of frustration and left the room to see heart monitors and other medical equipment. She was in a hospital. She saw a window to her right and saw a town or city outside surrounded by nature, but what caught her attention were all she could describe as a Mount Rushmore of unknown people. Where was she? She then heard a door open. She turned her head to the noise to see a pink-haired woman with what appeared to be a diamond on her forehead. "Ah, you are awake," the pink-haired woman said. "Now can you please remain calm? There is someone who would like to talk to you." Before she could reply the woman closed the door, leaving the room in silence once more. As she waited in the room she looked around once more with thoughts of what was happening until Venelana-san, she turned to the voice that took her by surprise to see a woman in only what she could describe as a military uniform, all black except for a gray armor that did little to hide her womanly figure. When she looked at her face all she could see was an animal make in the shape of a fox and a hood. "Why yes. How do you know my name?" she asked with uncertainty, her mind racing a mile a minute. "I have my ways," and that answer didn't help. Now the masked woman said, "How did you get here?" What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said. How did you get here?" The masked woman's voice was cold and demanding as she went closer to her. "Now I ask again. How did you get here?" Venelana swallowed her nerves. We had help from someone. She didn't mention who for fear how he might take it. Hagoromo, and it didn't look like it mattered. "Why you knew?" "Knew? No. Suspected?" "Yes. Damn old man, sometimes I don't know if strangle him or hug him at times." The woman knew the man more than she did, that was clear. Now she looked at the woman, more than she already was. "I take it you are here for Rias Gremory?" Her shock was clear. "You know where she is? Please tell me." "And why would I do that?" She felt tear going down her cheeks. She didn't care how she looked to the woman in front of her. This woman knew where her child was. She had to know. "Please. I made a mistake and I want to fix it. Please, I want to fix it. I don't care what you do to me, but I have to fix this. She's my little girl. I'll do anything, please, please." She couldn't help it. Her tear came streaming down her face as she cried. She didn't care what she looked like. She didn't care. "But you already found her." She stopped and turned to the woman with tears still running down cheeks. She saw the woman move her hands to grab the mask and hood covering her face and hair. As she saw the hood and mask removed she was still with shock. She had long flowing beautiful red hair, captivating blue-green eye and a perfect face of a beautiful woman in the prime of her life, but to her it was a face that she could only say one word to. "Rias." Rias smiled. "Hello mother, it's been a while, hasn't it?" Rias felt a mess of emotions. You see, today was originally her day off, a day to relax from all of the stressful work. But this morning one of her subordinates came with an urgent message that a large group of people came falling into the market district from a time-space rip like a kamui and, in essence, ending whatever she had planned today. And to see her mother after so long, well, you can imagine how she felt. Funny and a bit of shame. Really, she was looking forward to Rias. Her train of thought was broken at her mother's voice, a voice she had not heard in a very long time. Rias, who looked happy to see her by the looks of it. She could see that her mother tried to get up but was stopped by the pair of handcuffs that made Venelana turn her head and glare at the piece of metal. Rias couldn't help but chuckle. "How about I come over to you?" Venelana stopped glaring at the handcuffs and turned her head back to Rias. Not trusting her voice she nodded. As Rias took a seat next to the hospital bed a silence overcame the room for a minute till Rias spoke. "So mother, it's been a long time, hasn't it?" Venelana nodded. "Yes, it's been a long 4 months since you departed." While Venelana smiled for a second, she saw Rias narrow her eyes, which brought that smile to a worry. "Is there something wrong, Rias?" While she could see Rias appeared older, She knew there are spells to make one appear older or younger. For Satan's sake she uses one constantly to appear her daughter's age. But seeing how Rias reacted made her now think otherwise. Well, as you are probably starting to suspect, it has been longer than 3 months since I left, for me anyways that is. This made Venelana worry a lot. How long, Rias? Rias closed her eyes and sighed. I will explain when we get your group together. That reminded Venelana, where is everyone, come to think of it? I was in this room alone. Did something happen to them? She couldn't believe that she nearly forgot about them. She got so distracted from everything. Well, Rias started to explain. When you and everyone else arrived, you didn't do it at the best time. That doesn't explain where they are, Rias. She sighed. I know, let me finish. You landed in a very public place, the market square, in the middle of the morning rush, causing a panic which in turn got a few people hurt, and if you want to know, you've been unconscious for 3 hours. Venelana was starting to understand what happened, and that made her worry. Is everyone okay? Did the locals do something? Her voice gaining an almost accusing tone at the end. Rias just gave a flat look and with a sarcastic tone told, yes, the local did something. They called for medical assistance and Anbu. What horrible monsters they are. Venelana let out a sigh of relief, but something entered her mind. What's an Anbu? The redhead smiled. Anbu are an elite special forces group, a group that I am proud to say I was invited into after proving myself to these people's forces, and I'll tell you it is gonna take more than 3 months to get to this rank. You're in a special. The mother couldn't even finish her sentence. Her daughter was not only in a military force, she was part of an elite force. She felt both pride and fear for her once little girl. Pride for what she has accomplished and fear for what the military, let alone special forces, could do to her. Yep, and today was meant to be my day off. Imagine when you get a knock on the door that to someone telling you that an unknown group decided to break time and space to get in on the morning sales. Rias couldn't help but smile at small joke. And Venelana let out a small laugh in response. While I would have loved to hear about the specials I missed, you still haven't told me where everyone else is. Yes, you're right. When we brought you to the hospital, we separated you into smaller groups, or in you, Riser and my father, by yourselves, so we didn't end up with a bigger mess. The mother listened to Rias intently, noticing the pause on when she talked to her father made her question what he did to make her pause. Did your father do something, Rias? Did he say something stupid or offensive? I swear in recent history he has. She was interrupted by the Anbu mother. Calm down. Yes, he did say something stupid, but I handled it. There was an odd silence throughout the room as the two were left for their thoughts, from what they had learnt from the convocation until. So, you talked to your father first? I guess he was the first awake? This broke Rias from her thoughts. No, just used Cage Bunshin and he finished our talk quickly. Venelana couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Cage Bunshin. It sounded Japanese, but for some reason she couldn't translate it, which should be impossible since being able to understand any language was one of Devilkind's natural abilities. Rias just blinked. She then face-palmed herself. Sorry, I forgot you just arrived here. Let's say it's a spell and I'll explain it better later. Venelana nodded. It must have been odd for Rias having to explain what is common knowledge to her, and quite possibly everyone in this world, to her, Venelana the now newcomer. She then noticed that Rias was moving. Rias. I am about to undo your restraints. The mother's eyes widened in surprise as a smile came on her face. That said, don't try anything funny. I don't want to be the one that has to explain why the hospital became a battleground. Venelana nodded slowly as Rias moved her hand to the handcuffs. Hold her arm down. As she watched, she noticed that Rias didn't have any key for the cuffs, but Venelana noticed that Rias' hand seemed to be on fire, for lack of better terms. The flame glowed blue but was not blinding or solid like how some flames could be. If anything, one could see clearly through it, but all Venelana could tell that was not magic. She would question it now, but it was not the time to. And as Rias grabbed the cuffs, a strange pattern appeared on the cuffs, glowed for half a second, then fading away as the cuffs seemed to slip off her wrist. As Venelana moved her arm around as she grasped it, while she felt her magic flow through her normally once more. Well, those were unpleasant. Now what are we going to do? Asked Venelana. Rias raised an eyebrow. No, I am going to get my brother and all of you are going to follow me to meet the Hokage. Another thing that Venelana didn't recognize. Hokage? Who or what is that? Rias face-palmed up. Sorry, it's odd having to explain what is common knowledge here. Then again, I was in the same position a time ago. Right, anyway, the Hokage is the leader of the military force of this village, Konoha. At least she knew now where she was, but couldn't help but question as she looked out of the window once more. Village? It looks more like a city, and wouldn't make him a mayor? Rias let out a sigh of frustration. No, the Hokage is not a mayor. Konoha is more of a military-run city-state, and the Hokage is a general, who also runs the city, and is why it's called a village. tradition mostly since it started out as a small village. The mother nodded, noting Rias' growing annoyance as she did. So where is my son? And my idiot of a husband? I'm going to have few words with him when I meet him if you don't mind. Well, you can shout at him later. Right now we need to get Sirzekni and his family. I was going to have my cage bunchins to bring him and everyone else to meet up, but there's been a slight problem. Venelana gained a look of worry. What happened? The cage bushin I sent to Sirzekni was popped by Milika's coon. Worry was replaced with confusion. Again, explain later. Rias started move away from her mother towards the hospital's room door. Well, you coming? Venelana nodded and got up from the bed she had been on for the last few hours and walked towards Rias. As the two entered the hallway, Venelana looked around to see the hall empty. Surprising, since as far as she could tell it was a hospital. Where is everyone? She couldn't help but question. Which Rias was happy to answer. Away from you and the others for both parties' safety. We didn't know how you would react, so it was decided that all civilian doctors when restricted from entering this area and the patients moved somewhere else in the hospital. I'll say one thing, you have made everyone's day busy. Venelana, slightly embarrassed, nodded before asking, anything I should know when before we meet my son and his family? Rias nodded absently while she looked down the hospital halls. Yes, I have a few ambu in the room to make sure nothing bad happens, since his bother can be protective of his family, and with him and Grafia being in unfamiliar territory, we thought it also best to take another precaution. Like what? Asked Venelana, her head tilted in an inquisitive manner. Put them in a box, Rias said with a blush on her face as she explained. Venelana blinked. What? Just imagine those handcuffs you were in earlier and you can get an idea. They used for more powerful people, like Killer Bee after he does something stupid, the ambu said with a flat look on her face. Venelana gave Rias a flat look. I take this Killer Bee as someone powerful? And by the sound of it, a troublemaker? Rias sighed and mumbled, yes, to me and everyone else who has to sort out the paperwork when he visits. As Rias mumbled to herself, Venelana couldn't but look at her child. I gave her happiness knowing that Rias was doing well in her life, but also worry and sadness on how much she must have missed. How much did she miss? Her train of thought was cut when she heard Rias stop grumble and said, we're here. She looked to see Rias looking at a door leading to one of the numerous rooms of the hospital, and unlike the many she had passed at this point, there was noise coming from it. But she couldn't tell what was going on in there. She could hear what appeared to be shouting, grumbling and snickering. What in Satan's name was going on in that room? And from the look on Rias' face, she was thinking the same question. When Rias opened the door, the duo was introduced to an interesting sight. Venelana saw her son and daughter-in-law in two large black metal boxes with heavy chains and with what appeared to be Japanese seals attached to said chains, but what caught the two's attention was the two's faces. They were glaring at one of the other people in the room. Who, you may ask? A man wearing a imur like what her daughter was wearing, but without a hood which exposed his gravity-defying brown hair on his head. She could also see him wearing a Japanese monkey mask on his face, stopping her from getting an idea of what his facial feature were. And the fact that his man was holding the back of his head in pain also caught the two's attention. The cause of Mon's pain appeared to the same pink-haired Dr. Venelana saw earlier. The evidence? The fact she had a clipboard in the whacking position, with her face of exasperated annoyance. The two then heard some giggles and chuckles, turning their heads to see Milika's giggling with a few other masked men and women, each with a different animal-based mask, and by the looks of it trying not to laugh at the scene in front of them. As Venelana was looking on curiously, wondering what caused her son and daughter-in-law's bad mood, while Rias just face-palmed grasping an idea what happened. Sakura-san, moaned Rias as she thought of the paperwork that she was going to have to do. What did Saru do? The pink-haired doctor now know as Sakura turned her head to the duo, same as everyone in the room, each with various degrees of embarrassment. With Milika's being the exception, who was rushing toward his aunt and grandmother. Rias Oba. Vene Soba. As the young devil ran to the two, he suddenly stopped, with a conflicted look of love and worry. Rias turned her head toward when he shouted, saw this and smiled, knowing why he stopped, and kneeled down and spoke, don't worry Milika's chan. I want pop this time. Milika's smiled once more and glomped the crimson-haired woman as she hugged and smiled. That was all about 10 seconds till turned her head back to the doctor. Sakura, you still haven't answered? Sakura snapped out of the small trance she had while she saw the two reunited family members. Ah yes, I was punishing Saru here for insulting Mrs. Garifia here. I believe he called her Kori Mainu. While Venelana was seemingly having an odd day with her ability to translate languages, she could clearly understand that. The man known as Saru called her daughter-in-law ice bitch. As Venelana started to glare at the man, she felt an aura to her side and soon after a weight holding her leg. Looking down, she saw her grandson holding onto her leg like a lifeline and with a face of fear. The reason? Rias, with a dark aura emitting off her with a look of promised pain, aimed at the man called Saru. Saru. Asked Rias in calm voice. That wasn't. May I ask why you called my sister-in-law that? And it best be the best reason, because just giving me a good one won't save you. Saru started to sweat behind his mask as he stuttered a response. Well, after your clone was popped by the kid here, he was upset and started to cry. So I got him a lollipop and gave him a bit of company so he wouldn't cry. Mrs. Grafia didn't like being unable to comfort her son, and I may have aggravated he by telling not to worry. I helped with the kid. Basically Rias Tycho tempers raised and things said. The aura died down, but Ria's smile was still on her face as she hummed and replied, okay, I won't punish you. Saru let out a sigh of relief. But you have volunteered for gate duty for a week, and his head just fell. As the Anbu member grumbled, Grafia made herself know. Rias-sama, may I punish this man instead? He was the one who insulted me. Rias looked at her sister-in-law and shook her head. Nope. Besides, Saru-san here was only doing his job. I know you were worried, but it no excuse to be aggressive. Grafia let out a sigh. She was right, she thought to herself. She should have thought before she acted, but with all that happened, she let her emotions get the better of her. As she was about to apologize, she stopped when she heard a voice. A voice that told her something she should have saw it coming but couldn't prepare for. Rias-tan. 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 Sirzek and his Siskon tendencies. As people gave the older but very childish brother a flat look, or a look that could tell strangers that they'd need therapy after seeing this, Sirzek shook the metal box and thrashed, trying to get out. It didn't work. As Venelana cradled her face with one of her hands, she felt a tug on her dress. She looked down to see her grandson looking up to her with a questioning look. Sobo, why is Tusan acting strange? Venelana, exasperated, sighed. Because neither me or your mother could stop him when we need to. Rias shook her head as she started to walk to her brother Sirzek knee. Sirzek stopped. He looked at Rias with a look resembling a puppy, only not as cute. Sirzek knee, she repeated again. I am going to let you, but I need you to be good and listen to my instructions, okay? If you do this, I'll give you a hug. The greatest of the Satans nodded his head, not trusting his voice. Good. Rias went to the metal box and put her hand on it as her hand glowed once more. A second later there was a clunk sound from the box as the lock from the micro-prison opened, with the box splitting and falling into two pieces. And as prison fell, Rias was glopped by a torpedo known as her brother. Rias-tan. The room just gave a deadpanned look at quickly changed to exaggerated shock after a second. Rias hugged back. I missed Aniki. A surprised look appeared on Sirzek's face, that quickly turned into an sincere smile. I missed you too, Rias-tan. This hugged for a minute until Rias tensed and gained a look of professional soldier. Sirzek knee, I am going to need you to let go. There's been something important happen. Sirzek pouted. But why? Rias' serious look changed into a deadpan. I just said. The childish devil once more complained while shedding crocodile tear, but nothing happened. The red-haired Anbu sighed and pushed away from her brother, to much of his dismay, as she turned to Saru. Saru, I need you and your team to go to our little chicken's room. He's been a problem. You have full permission to use all force besides killing, is that understood? Saru saluted and nodded, with his Anbu following suit. Hi Tycho, and seemingly teleported to most of the room's occupants. As the guests of Konoha wondered what was going on, Rias moved to Grafia and released her from her micro-prison. The maid quick went to her child and gave a quick hug before dragging her immature husband to them. Sakura, come with me too. I might need you if our problem is any more incooperative. Sakura nodded and started to walk to the door as she called the rest. Everyone else, follow me. We're meeting up with everyone else at the lobby. Everyone else nodded too as they made their ways to the door, ready to meet up with rest of the visitors, as well as hope they could get some answers on Rias' disappearance and try to convince her to come back with them. But them knowing that Rias has been here for some time was worrying them, especially not knowing how long she has been here. The walk to the reception was filled with silence, only the noise of their footsteps were the only thing reaching the group ears until they got to the lower levels, where the muffled sound of convocations and other activities were heard. The group soon arrived at the lobby and soon made all but two of the group's jaws drop. They saw the rest of the visitors bearing Riser and Peerage bearing one person, but there was two things out of place. Two Rias perfectly identical, interacting and working independently, and Issa perving. What with how he had acted as of later, it was a bit of a surprise. Our Rias. Why are there two of you? Pointed Venelana as she gasped at what she saw. She knew no magic that could make copies of one's self, let alone interact with other people. Well, you wondered what Cage Bunshin was? Well, those are it. Perfect copies that when dispelling or killed give me the memory of what happened to them. As the rest of the group besides Sakura awed at the magic before them, the two walked to the rest of the group still gawked at the sight before them. As Rias walked to the others and took account of who was in the lobby, and she saw her peerage, Riser's family bearing Riser himself, even his younger sister who was more often than not from memory with his peerage, and her father, who was in handcuffs, twins Rias, twin Opais, drooled Issei with that the real Rias made her presence known. Clones, you are dismissed. With that she made a hand sign and the clones popped, surprising the group bearing Sakura and Zeoticus. Ooh, the Opai is gone, whined the perv as the rest of the group turned to the redhead, each with a multitude of emotions. Rias, is that you? The real you? Questioned Akeno with a hopeful but cautious voice. Rias just smiled and nodded, and as she did the metaphorical dam broke, her peerage made their happiness known, mostly from shouts of joy and flying glomp from Gasper. Rias-sama, I am sorry, cried the young half-vamp. Rias shook her head and let out a small giggle. Now don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. Whatever you did, besides I am the one who left without saying goodbye. She is correct, Gasper-kun, said Akeno with a closed-eyed smile as she walked to Rias. Gasper-kun, could you please let go of Rias-sama for a second? Gasper nodded and let go, and as soon as he did, slap. There was gasps happen from around the lobby as Akeno's arm was outstretched from the slap she just gave Rias. Venelana didn't appreciate that, Akeno-chan. I can understand your anger against Rias for leaving, I don't. Ka-chan, it's okay, said Rias, recovering from the blow. Akeno. Way did you leave? We could have fixed it. We always did. You didn't. Why you didn't? As tears entered Akeno's eyes, the red Anbu hugged her. Let it out, Akeno-chan. Let it out. As the former black-haired queen hugged back, she sobbed out, I missed you, we missed you. Rias smiled. I know there were smiles around the lobby. This is great. Rias-senpai here, we can bring her home, shouted Issei in joy as he raised his arms above his head. No, Issei-chan, I am staying here, the peerage paused. Era? Just as I said, now I am sorry, I just need to do something. Before any of Rias' peerage could do anything, she moved to the Phoenix family. Lord Phoenix, Lady Phoenix, Mistress Revel Phoenix, the Crimson Princess greeted with a professional attitude. Mistress Gremory, greeted Lord Phoenix. He then noticed there was a slight flinch on the Crimson Princess expression. He wondered why. Mistress Gremory, I would like to apologize for my brother's atuete. His behavior has not fitting for his position as a noble, Revel greeted, since as she was also part of Riser's peerage to gain experience for when she gained hers, and she saw how her brother acted. Truthfully, she had wished her father would cancel the agreement for multiple reasons, ranging from the fact on how Riser treated Rias to how he viewed women. Something her mother was in agreement with. Rias thinned her lip. You might not be so apologetic in a minute. Lady Phoenix raised an eyebrow. Oh, and why is that? Rias sighed. Your son is a troublemaker. Before anyone could ask, another group entered the lobby, Riser's peerage. They were cuffed like Zeoticus but had several Anbu around them as they watched the peerage. Ah, you're all here, good. Rias-sama, greeted the queen of Riser peerage, Ubaluna. Rias nodded in acknowledgement and started to speak to everyone in the lobby. Alright everyone, listen up. We are soon going to meet someone very important, and as much as you all want to know what's going on and what happened, that will have to wait. This is more important. Don't worry, as soon as we arrive where we are going all will be answered. Nods and mumbles of agreement, some reluctant, came from everyone. But Ubaluna questioned something. What about Riser-sama? I don't see him anywhere. When she said that, the Phoenix peerage vocalized in agreement, wondering where their master was. He should be here any second now. In fact, she raised her hand to silence the group, where they heard a scuffle. He here. The lobby turned to the noise to only gasp. A cuffed Riser was being dragged by a group of Anbu. Venelana recognized Saru and his team from earlier, as well as a few more she didn't know. But what caught their attention was the ones not dragging the blonde devil had their weapons were drawn, and ready to strike if he did anything. This explained why his peerage was still in cuffs. Riser-ni-sama, shouted a worried Revel. Mistress Gremory, may I ask why my son is being dragged and has weapons pointed at him? Questioned a angry Lord Phoenix. Rias looked at him with the utmost seriousness because he has been very uncooperative. With that she started to walk to the struggling devil. And as she did, Saru saluted Rias. Taiko, the guest has been transported to the lobby as you asked. I can see that, she said as she looked at a glaring Riser. Did he give you any trouble? Only death threats ever other second and the ever constant struggling, nothing we can't handle. Rias nodded and walked closer to Riser, and as she did his eyes never left her. And the first thing out of his mouth, hello Rias-chan. Her eyes narrowed and greeted the blonde devil with a dark tone. Riser-san. May I ask that you tell these commoners to release me at once, he demanded with venom in his voice. And why should I do that? I mean, it's not like you threatened me or made demands from me just like father barring threats. Oh wait. As the two argued, everybody in the lobby listened and started to get an idea why Riser in cuffs. You mean me tell you to come back, so we can get married and do our duty of keeping our bloodlines pure, and that reinforced it. But Rias, when she heard that, did something unexpected. Thump, a devastating punch to the gut. Listen up, you prick. She shouted, I did not pick to leave that world and spend 10 years of my life living here just to give it up because of some fucked up idea of duty. So you are going to shut up and follow us, Arcami, so help me I will test the limits of your so-called immortality, got it? Riser, gasping from the hit, snarled but nodded, but that wasn't important. 10 year, came a shocked voice. The fact that the guests just learned how long Rias was here was. This brought shock to the whole lot of them, bearing those who lived here. Rias Peerage was shocked to hear that their master, their friend, was gone from their world for 10 years. How? It was only 4 months for them, so what happened? To the rest of the devils it was more the shock of the fact that so much time has passed for Rias. The rumor that long-lived species such as themselves, devils, make time seem quicker to them was a myth. A year was a year, and that was a long time, let alone 10 years. Just how much did they miss? Rias looked at the group and sighed. I know that this is hard for you right now, Cammy, I know it's hard for me right now. But we need to get moving, so please follow me. Sakura-san could come with us too, I feel that you will be needed. With this the lot of them nodded and started to follow. As the group left the lobby into the village, Rias Peerage whispered to one another. 10 years, how that possible? She only left 4 months ago, do you think she lied? Questioned Issei, shocked at what he just heard. I don't think so, Issei-kun. Why would she lie? Also, she looks like she part of the military in high ranking too, replied Asia, shocked just like the rest of them, but also using her what little knowledge of combat from her time at the church and with the fallen faction. Could be the distant worlds theory, interrupted Sirzek. Huh, the what theory? Questioned the Welsh dragon host. It was a theory that Ajuka-san purposed, that dimensions time are affected by how close they are to one another, just how the underworld and the normal world have near identical timelines, explained the king of demons. Huh. How does that work? Shout, whispered Issei, not a clue. As the group walked in silence after that comment, they looked around while they walked. The streets were clear, but they could see in the distance people crowding at ends of streets trying to look at them, only to be stopped by some people wearing headband, some in a uniform too. They must have been police or military. They could also see the village's architecture to be different from what they were used to, like someone decided to make building modern designs, old-fashioned Japanese architect with a dash of steampunk into the designs. Interesting, but slightly alien to them too. As the group walked through the village, they arrived at their destination 20 minutes later, a large house or small mansion. It was Western style and was also brick-laid, 3 stories high and quite wide. It also had a large garden that was well kept, which was cut off by a large iron fence and gate. All right, we are here, said Rias as she pointed to the building. Okay, why are we here? Questioned Issei, looking at the large house. Bastard must load it. It's home of the Hokage. Normally we would go to the Hokage Tower, as she pointed to a large red domed building in the distance, but the Hokage said to meet here for special reasons. Special reason? Rias sighed and moved to the gate, looking happy and nervous. That made the group curious. Was she friend with the Hokage or something? As she got to the gate, she put her hand on a stylized spiral and pushed whatever energy she was using into it, as Kaneko to narrow her eyes. It felt familiar. The gate soon opened and the group started to walk to the door, where they heard activity inside. As Rias got the door, she turned to the guests. All right, everyone. This is going to be shock, but this is possibly the best way to tell you. Tell us what? Questioned Venelana as she felt overwhelmed by everything that happened today. Rias closed her eyes and breathed in. She then opened the door and said loudly, hello. There was a slight silence for 2 seconds until there was a pitter-patter of small feet. Okazen. Okazen. Rias was soon glomped by a small red-headed girl wearing a white summer dress. The girl was by the looks of it 5 years old. Her hair was a perfect match in color. Rias, although her hair was similar, had a bit of spike to it. Her face made the older of the group do a double take. She was the near spitting image of Rias when she was that age. The only difference was the young girl had sapphire blue eyes instead of the blue-green eyes that Rias had. Venelana then processed what the little girl said. Okazen. Ar Imoudo, don't glomp Okazen, she just got back. Venelana's head nearly twisted to look at the other young voice that just said that and near gasped. The voice was a boy in orange t-shirt with tan shorts, 7 most likely. He had spiky blonde hair and a tanned face. He didn't look identical to Rias but did have some feature that belonged to Rias. More specifically her blue-green eyes. As the group looked at the two children with a multitude of emotions, a third person came into view. He was an adult, taller than Rias by a head, and by his physical shape physically fit too. He wore a large orange coat which was miss its sleeves and reacted to the bottom parts of his legs, sage coat sleeveless, which exposed his arms. He also seemed to be wearing a green flak jacket and a black wife-beater shirt underneath the coat. He had black cargo trousers with tape or bandages at the bottom which lead to black sandals, but his face, what caught her attention's blonde hair that matched the boy's and a face that looked very similar to him too, and the same sapphire blue eyes. The only thing that neither child had facial-wise were those whisker-like marks. "Hey Benihime," the man said lovingly as he walked to them. These the people you were talking about?" Rias, who was hugging the little girl, smiled at the man. "Yes Narukoi. These people are them." She picked up the girl and walked to the man as the group stared in utter shock. She went next to the man as she passed her child to the whiskered man as he beckoned the young lad to come over, which he did. "Okazen, Oto-san, Oni-san and everyone else, I would like you to meet my husband Naruto Uzumaki and children Mito Uzumaki and Ichigo Uzumaki, my family." Gasps and shouts of shock came from the visitors. And Venelana, her thought processed everything throughout the day, her daughter being in a military and was high-ranking, missing 10 years of her daughter's life, and now the fact she had a family of her own. So she did one thing that others may have also done. She fainted. Venelana felt she had a strange dream. She dreamt that she was taken to a strange place, a different world, and she found her little Rias after months of searching, only to find out she was a high-ranking military officer, was in that strange world for 10 years and had a husband and 2 children. As she pondered about it, she moved around her bed to get more comfortable, until she realized. This isn't my bed. This isn't even a bed. Her eyes near snapped open to see the pink-haired woman, Sakura from her dreams, looking fairly intently at her. "Ah, you're awake Venelana-san." The brunette devil stared at the doctor and muttered, "It wasn't a dream." Sakura raised an eyebrow in question until a look of realization came. "If you think you dreamed what I thought you have, well." She then pointed, "I think you're still dreaming." As she looked around, from her place on the sofa, she saw that she was in a living room with something she could only describe as a mess. The brunette didn't know what to think as she saw Rias Peerage, barring Issei in a nearly catatonic, barely moving and faces stuck in a look of shock. She saw the Phoenix family also barring Riser, looking confused and a little happy in the case of the mother and daughter, but mostly confused. When she saw Riser's Peerage, she nearly laughed. Nearly half of them looked like they sucked a lemon, were dazed or finding the walls to an excellent form of time killer as they killed their brain cells by bashing said brain against it. The other half seemed to be muttering to themselves about their bratty king or attempting to stop the others from making the walls red with their brains. She then saw her daughter-in-law Graphia looking at her grandchildren, which she was still in shock about too, cooing at her niece and nephew, who were talking and playing with their new cousin who seemed happy to have someone close to his age to play with, but she could also tell that the maid was having a damn near mental breakdown as well, having a niece and a nephew. At least she didn't faint like she did, and then finally she looked at the last 4 Riser, Issei, her husband Zeoticus, and finally her son Sirzek. And what she saw had her conflicted. Her son and her daughter's pawn were glaring at Ria's husband, Naruto, if she remembered right, but the two seemed slightly injured. It was more comical since the two seemed to be bandaged like mummies with each lump on their head. But the other two? Oh, they seemed worse off. Her husband had a black eye and was holding a tissue to his nose which seemed to have a bit of blood on it, and Riser. He looked like he was turned into a professional boxer's punching bag for a day, black eyes, bloody mouth and nose, swelling cheek, you name it, his face had it, surprising Venelana for the sheer fact that the Phoenix healing factor should have stopped that. She also saw that Sakura was starting to treat the 4 with some form of energy. What was that energy? And the man known as Naruto was glaring at those two with a cold fury. Oba-chan's awake Okawa-chan. Her thoughts were broken as she heard a young girl's voice, her granddaughter Mito Uzumaki. Hello, so you're Oba-chan. Okawa-chan told me and me about you. The excitable girl then puffed her cheeks and looked adorable, in Venelana's mind anyways. But why was she mad? Mito-chan. The girl hummed in response. Why are you angry? Because every time Okawa-chan talks about you she gets sad. You should have come sooner Databaya. Make her happy you meanie. Venelana blinked then she giggled, which turned to full-blown laughter. Mito straightened up and stomped her foot. Oi, stop laughing, Databaya. Venelana stopped laughing after a few seconds and looked at her and smiled. I know now Mito-chan, and I hope to make Rias happy again. The young girl blinked and showed a toothy grin, returning the smile that her grandma had. She only heard stories about her, good and bad, but she felt that her grandma was a good woman at heart. And she followed what her parents say: family are those who try to be, and even if they haven't seen each other in how long, it's the thought that counts. Besides, having more family means more presents on birthdays and more treats whenever they visit. What? She was a 5-year-old girl, let her dream. Ahem. The two turned to see the room staring at them, from a staring but smiling Naruto to Sirzex, who seemingly crying river of tears as he bit a napkin. No idea where the napkin came from though. Well, it good to see some of the family getting along, quipped Naruto. Venelana blinked at Naruto. So you're my daughter's husband, Naruto Uzumaki, correct? If I may ask, why are 4 of our group, 2 of which are family, and 1, someone who is close to my daughter, hurt? Her tone got darker as she went on, but that didn't seem to stop Naruto's smile. Well, they seem unhappy with me being married to Benihime, and well, let's just say that those 2 were being, well, childish, so I gave them a love tap. A love tap? Sirzex-san said, and I quote, "You defiled my Ria-tan, and was trying to hit me in the arrow. Nayutan here kept crying that my wife's boobs should have belonged to him, not me. He's downright lucky I didn't make punch him into the neighboring country." Venelana's sweat dropped as she looked at the 2 more childish of the group. Issei and Sirzex seemed to look sheepish as she stared at them until she shook her head and looked back to the blonde. And the other 2? Naruto gained a darker look on his face. After what they said, they had it coming. The adults barring Zeoticus and Riser shivered at his tone. The younger of the group though didn't seem to care. The kids were playing with each other and Issei was glaring at the 2 devils, unsurprising really given how they have acted as of late. And the rest of Ria's peerage and a few risers was still frozen or in shock. Seriously, Naruto was starting to worry if he needs Sakura to look them over. Venelana shook her head, and where is my little Rias in all of this? He let out when he heard that before a voice came from behind. I was getting tea for all of us. She turned her head to see Rias with a few clones each carrying a tray with either a pot of tea with cups or a tray with small snacks. The Crimson Anbu moved to the small coffee table in middle of the room, putting down the tray, sitting next to her husband and dismissing the clone when they were finished. And to be fair, I don't think Naruto would have listened if I told him not to punch them. He's protective like that, but I did tell him to punch Ni-sama though. As had anime ESC tears roll down Sirzek's face, Venelana blinked. And why? Because he kept calling me little Ria-tan and was trying to hurt my husband, she deadpanned. Venelana felt a sweat drop coming as Sirzek's tears turned into waterfalls until Graphia pulled him by the ear and started to give him a stern talking. Rias shook her head and looked at her peerage and blinked. Are they still in shock? Naruto deadpanned. Yep, still frozen. You'd think they would have also blinked by now too. Naruto turned to Sakura. Sakura-chan, can you check on them? Just to make sure the stiffs aren't really stiffs. The redhead playfully batted his arm at the poor joke as Sakura went to the group. As Venelana looked away from her berated son, she saw Sakura do some hand signs, and when she finished, one of her hands seemed to have the same flame she saw Rias produce earlier, but this time green. She became suspicious as she looked on. Again, that energy? Ignoring the commotion and onlookers, Sakura brought the green flame to each of the head of the Crimson Princess peerage heads and hummed. As she pulled back, the doctor brought her hand to her chin. Then that hand then quickly flicked each of the young devils' heads. Owie. Eep. Hey. Ow. Oh. Sakura turned to the couple, ignoring the others. They were fine, as you can tell, just need a wake-up call. Rias and Naruto's sweat dropped and sarcastically commented, we can tell. Sakura sighed and started to move to Riser's peerage, as she felt a headache coming. As Akano rubbed her head with a small moan of delight to her own pain, she looked at Rias. Rias-sama, I know you have been here for a while and this might be a bit rude, but, what in Satan's name is going on? She shouted with words of agreements around the room. Yes, I would like to know why instead of following through with your commitment and marrying Riser-san here, you have instead married a peasant and had 2 children, shouted Zeoticus, with his wounds healed, as the other guests barring Riser seemed to try and move away from the devil. Why, you may ask? The killer intent aimed at said devil. Naruto and Rias gained a dark look. Ichigo-chan? Hi Okawa-san? Could you take your sister and your cousin outside the backyard and play? Okawa-san and Oto-san need to talk to Gigi here, and well, I am certain you 3 might get bored, the mother said to her son with kindness in her voice, but the adults and teens could tell that it had an undertone meaning. Get out so I can tear this man apart. But I want to. Well, get you and your sister ramen later if you do, said Naruto. The Uzumaki children's eyes became wide with glee as they looked at their father. The children quickly grabbed their new cousin and dragged him out the room with near breakneck speeds that would leave Guy gawking. And when the children left, an uncomfortable silence entered the room. Not be sound offensive, Ria-sama, but will yours and my children be okay by themselves? Questioned Graphia with so nervousness at the aura the two were emitting. Oh, they'll be fine, but let's not talk about them because didn't our in-law just happen to ask a very poorly worded question, said Naruto, his voice containing anger. I take it that you're angry? Questioned Asia Kami. Yes, I am angry. The whiskered man nearly roared, making Asia jump back and go eep. Oi, don't shout at Asia-chan. Issei shouted back. Naruto sighed. I apologize, I should nt have snapped at you, Asia-chan. But after hearing Gigi Teme here, you can imagine it can make me unhappy. Especially given the fact I know what he wanted, and you would think he would be happy to see his daughter after 10 years. 3 months actually. Naruto blinked and turned to his wife. The universal distance theory, you know the theory the science team theorized, where different universe follows a different time flow depending on how close they are to one another. Yeah, it's now fact. By the way, thank you for scientific data. The science team will love it, replied Rias with a dry tone. Naruto blinked once more and face-palmed. I hate universal travel. I know, Narukoi, I know, I mean seriously. Do you remember that world that was 99% acid? Or the one that was always on fire? Now I can add time screwing to the inter-universal book of stupid. Kami, why do you make things so complicated? Moaned Naruto as Rias giggled at him. Zeoticus cleared his throat. Can you two please stop your banter? I want answers and I want them now. The couple stopped and gave an unpleasant look at the man but nodded. Right before we begin, what has Hagoromo-sama told you? Questioned Rias. What do you mean, senpai? Said Asia, wondering why her king asked that. Okay, I'll go along with nothing then. I asked because I had to do 3 things before coming here. The first was to de-age. De-age? As in getting younger? Questioned Issei as Rias nodded. He didn't know the ins and outs of magic, but as far as he knew, there was no magic that could make one younger, only look like one, and by the looks on the oldest of the group they were just as shocked to hear. It also gave way to a new question. How powerful was that ghost? The second I know will anger one of you, and that is the fact I had to give up my magic and have it replaced. The group was in shock again. How does that work and what replaced her magic? Sure, there has been those without magic and other energies, but they were rare, and to have it fully replaced, that should be impossible. But before any of them could ask. Chakra. You have chakra, don't you? Kaneko spoke and wasn't happy by the sounds of it. Rias gave a slightly sorrowful look and nodded to the Neko. Yes, I have chakra. This shocked the group, but in Kaneko's case angered. Rias-sama, while I understand that given the circumstances to why you choose that, you know what happens to those with chakra. The supposed insanity. Yes, but given the fact that I have lived with having chakra for a decade and have used it with no issues, may mean I may have a bit more knowledge at this point. I am sorry, Kaneko-chan, but I know you never really used your chakra, and given your bad history with it you may be a bit biased in your judgment. The guests were silent, even Riser. A few of them knew about Kaneko's sister, Kuroka, and her murder of her late master, a man obsessed with unlocking the secrets of chakra only to be killed by his servant, who, by most accounts, went insane when using the believed ultimate form of chakra, senjutsu, the art of bringing nature into oneself and believed to be the cause of insanity. While a number of them believed full-heartedly that chakra did bring unneeded dangers. Most of the more observant and older of the group felt something else was going on when that news broke. Kuroka's master wasn't the most stable, or kindest for that matter. It wouldn't surprise them if he was the cause of death, not the Neko's house supposed insanity from senjutsu, but became insane from his actions, but they were more interested in the fact that Rias had chakra and had used it for a long time without problem. The older would have to talk later, that those that used chakra go insane was false or mostly false, and what they would do with such info. As Kaneko gritted her teeth, Naruto said something to her. I know you feel betrayed, Neko-chan, and I know you are angry, but please don't hate her for it. She has missed you for a long time, all of you, and she had no choice in the matter. It was either this, or a terrible fate, and I'll ask again. Please don't hate her, you all have suffered enough. The Nekosho stared at the man for a minute and then looked at the floor and grumped. Naruto smiled and let out a small laugh as he made out the grumbling. Stupid yakitori, forcing Rias-sama to make a stupid decision. Ahem, I know this is quite the revelation, but can we continue? Said Zeoticus, but was surprisingly respectful saying so, but given what he learnt, understandably so. Rias nodded and gained a worried look on her face. Yes, now the final requirement. I know it will anger a lot. Ah, who am I kidding, all of you? If the guest's attention wasn't on her, it was most definitely was now. And what is that? To become human. The room was silent. The whole room barring the couple was shocked. To most of them it seemed like blasphemy. You're saying that you gave up your devilhood to become a pathetic human? Shouted Riser with a large amount of anger in his voice. Zeoticus was just as angry too, I agree. How could you betray your race so much, Rias? You will come back right now and... Before he could continue or anyone else could say anything, a crushing aura fell on everyone in the room. It's just like with Hagoromo, thought the devils. Unlike before, to most of the group it felt less powerful, but to the two offending devils they felt it 10 times worse. And this aura, this killer intent was coming from a frowning Naruto. You know, Rias-chan told me all about you, how her father was a prideful man, a stubborn hypocritical man, who preached about how one should do as they please and then tries to force his child to marry a sorry excuse for a person. Naruto paused and stood up and started to move towards the two. Now, I like to think I am a fair man, a good leader who doesn't abuse his power, but right now, I feel like I should make an example out of you too. You come to our home after all you done and have the gall to call my wife a traitor. What does that make you, Zeoticus Teme? A man who sold his daughter to a person who would use her like spoiled brat with a toy, only to throw it away when he gets bored or broken it. He then grabbed both of the devils' faces and nearly snarled at them. So, let me tell you something, if any of you insult, threaten or even look at my wife in any way I don't like, you won't be a guest any longer, you'll be a prisoner, and you do not want to know what I do to prisoners that hurt those precious to me. With that, the killer intent died down as Naruto moved and sat next his wife again. You done, Naru-koi? Questioned Rias with a small smile. Yep, her smile nearly went megawatt as she kissed his cheek. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Do you plan on saying anything else? Nope. Good, now stop scaring our guests, Rias said blandly as she pointed to many others in the room who were shivering in fright at his actions. Well, Akano wasn't. She seemed to be shivering in lust at Naruto's actions. Rias would have face-palmed if she didn't know the girl. But Benny Haim. He pouted. It was fun putting down those two. No buts or you're sleeping on the couch. Naruto gave a flat look. Benihime, remember the last time you forced me to sleep on the couch? We had another kid on the way the day after. Rias turned red in embracement when he said that. The others in the room though were either red-faced like Rias at the implication, laughing at the looks on the others' faces, angered like Searzex, Zeoticus, or in Riser's and Issei's case jealousy. Venelana though was chalk white. Did I just sleep where my grandchildren were conceived? Rias glared at Naruto lightly. This is for telling our friends about the dress incident, isn't it? He just grinned. You know it. Asia still atomic red interrupted. Can you change the conversation topic please? Please, replied Venelana quickly as she tried to forget what she just heard. How about you tell us something else, like how you two got together? The brunette finished quickly and awkwardly, thinking of a subject that she, and most likely everybody, wanted to know. The couple blinked and looked at one another. After a second they smiled, a smile filled with happiness, sadness and regret. Alright, said Naruto with nostalgia, where should we begin? At the beginning seems a good start. The two let out a small laugh. So, where I first came to this world then, stated Rias. Most of the group paused. They meet just after she left. Searzex cleared his throat. Yes please. Alright then, how we meet was interesting to say the least. Oh, and how is that? Well, flashback, Rias POV. My eyes were closed as I felt a soft, hard surface on my body. After I had entered the portal I blacked out. I didn't know and still to this day don't know if that was purposeful or a side effect of entering this world from my old home, but that didn't matter, not then, not now. As I opened eyes to the new world around me I saw a forest, thick, green, full of life and a few rays of sun to give light, but then again, that didn't matter because I felt different. Perhaps it was my mind telling me that I had changed so much physically in so little time. Or perhaps it was thanks to the emotions I felt. Sadness, worry, loneliness, but most of all, happiness. I don't why, but at that moment I started laughing. I think I laughed because of, well, everything really. The rating game, the wedding, and the talk I had with mother. I just couldn't help it. Cammy, I was so confused. It wasn't a few seconds after I started laughing and I was crying too. The girl forced to run to escape a life that will lead to only pain, only to lose everything and gain that one thing she always wanted, freedom. My name, it didn't matter anymore. Who in this world would care for the name Rias Gremory? No more free rides or life of unearned privilege. This was my moment, rise or die, and I will tell you those words became more literal as time went on. After I calmed down, I looked down at myself and felt anger. I was still wearing that wedding dress. It's funny that something that is quite beautiful and meant to be a symbol of happiness was so hideous to me. A symbol of happiness turned to a symbol of would-be slavery. So, I did what felt right. I ripped it off, and I ripped and ripped until it was only tatters. As I stood in remains of my dress, I felt free. I should have been embarrassed being in only my bra and panties, but I couldn't, not after everything. I closed my eyes and said something that I felt, something I couldn't just keep in thought. I am free, and then there was silence, both where I was and in my head, no worries, no sadness, and no panic, just that thought. I guess that it just hit me. It was a few seconds after that I heard a noise. I turned to the source of the noise to see a boy around my age with sun-kissed blonde hair, with sapphire eyes and whiskers on his tanned cheeks. He adorned an orange and black jumpsuit and black sandals and had a black headband with a metal plate attached to it. Oddly, that metal plate had a pattern on it that seemed to be a spiral over a leaf. In the end, that didn't interest me. It was the fact he was pointing at me with an atomic red blush. He then spoke his first word to me, and well, at the very least there was someone to share some embarrassment with. What the hell happened to your clothes? Flashback end, no POV. There was silence that swept across the room at the story until coo 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 came a laugh from Akano as she tried to stifle it to no avail. This broke the pre-verbal dam as the room was soon filled with laughter and gasps at the story. Ah. Lucky Teme. I want to see Ria-senpai naked, cried Issei, staring at her breasts, only to be bonked on his head by Naruto. Oi Ero Nayuten. Stop perving on my wife, shouted Naruto, glaring at the Welsh dragon host. Issei recovered quickly and glared back, make me baka kitsune. The two glared more at each other until Rias came between them. That enough, you two. Be but Rias-senpai. No buts, Issei. I know that it may seem odd, but Naruto is my husband, and while I don't want him to hurt any of you, all he's doing is trying to protect me, and given the fact that two people are here that wished me to be unhappy, you can imagine how much he on edge. So, please Issei, don't make those kinds of comments again. Issei was silent in shock. She never in his time as a servant stopped him from his pervy comments or actions, even when it was bad for his health. So, when she told him to stop. How about we continue? Interrupted Venelana. She could feel the tension rising a bit, grasping that her little girl who was now a changed woman and different from when they last saw her. Rias nodded and gained a sad look on her face as grasped her husband's hand. Okay. And before I continue the tale, there is one thing that I must mention. The deal to come here. I already told you that I became human, but that wasn't the only requirement that was needed. You see, Hagoromo-sama didn't turn me human just because. He did it so I wouldn't get killed. As you can gather, the humans of this world are far stronger than the ones you're used to. The group nodded, some more hesitant than others, wondering where So was going with this. He asked me to help someone. My husband Naruto. I didn't know this at the time. The only thing he told me that an event may happen that may lose his way. Rias-sama, where are you going with this? Questioned Asia as she started to feel uncomfortable. She's talking about a big event in our lives, Asia-san. One that shaped the man, if not this whole world's future, answered Sakura vaguely as she flinched. She knew the story. A good part of her hated the story, but it was important, too important to leave out. Shaped the. Sirzek started to worry. What did this man do? Yes. Now let me tell you how I meet Naruto-kun, the broken shinobi. Flashback start. Rias Pav. After the embarrassment between us faded, Naruto-kun asked why I was out here naked and by myself, so I answered honestly. I ran away from my own wedding. As you could imagine, he was a bit confused, but was willing to help me as it was late in the day and was going to be dark soon, and so he gave me his jacket, gave me a piggyback, and started walking to his camp. Thank you for helping me, Uzumaki-san. It's not a problem, and call me Naruto and drop the san. San makes me feel like a fossil. I let out a small giggle. As you wish, Naruto-san. He groaned as I let out a small laugh. I could see him smile, but I soon noticed how dark it was getting. It is getting dark fast, isn't it? Yep, again. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me. I can only imagine what could have got me in the dead of night. Naruto then stopped in his tracks, and an unconfutable silence came between the two of us. Naruto-san? I questioned. Did I say something wrong or did something happen? We're just about to hit camp. Word of warning, my sensei is a bit of a pervert, but he's harmless. He spoke differently than he was before, less playful and open. He seemed to become distant, reserved. But before I could ask if something was wrong, a third voice came in the mix. Ah, there you are, Naruto. Did you find any wild wasabi? Because if you haven't, then the fish we caught is gonna. The voice stopped as I looked at the man who spoke. He was tall, Very tall, about 7 foot minimum, and that wasn't the only attention-grabbing thing about him. He had a mane of spiky white hair. His face was aged but still full of life. On his face 2 features stood out, 2 red strips that went down from his eye to his jaw and a small wart on his nose. Funny enough, he called it beauty mark when people pointed it out. And finally, his clothes, they were red and green. I had to say he reminded me of a kabuki. Oh Naruto-kun. What a beautiful lady you found yourself, and already out her cloths and in yours. Sniff, I am so proud of you Gaki. He cried out. Yep, definitely a kabuki. While I was trying to calm down a blush of the implications. Odd, I know, since I have teased others with my body. But given everything at this point, I wasn't the most playful at the moment. Even if I was joking with Naruto a minute ago. Naruto corrected him. Ero Sennin, it's not like that. I found her lost with her clothes destroyed. The older man looked like he wanted to joke but flinched. He looked like he didn't like the tone Naruto was using and changed the convocation. Right. Naruto, could you check on our meal while I have a small chat with our guest? The blonde nodded and moved towards the camp, leaving the two by themselves as an odd silence settled around them. So, what's your name? Rias Gremory, a pleasure, and yours? Jiraiya. Now that introductions are out of the way, may I ask, what did you say to my student to be like that? I sighed as I held my head, thinking on what changed Naruto's attitude so rapidly. I don't know. We were talking, even joking at one point, and then he became distant. What was the last thing you said to him before he became like that? I was thanking him for helping me. Jiraiya pressed on. Anything specific? I thought harder on that. I think I mentioned that I don't know what would happen to me if he didn't find me. He then looked like he recognized what happened. Ah, well, my apologies. I think I know why he's like this, and to be fair, has been a lot like this as of late. Any particular reason why? A tragedy. This made me pause. Did something happen in this world, or was it more personal? Come. Let's get some food. 10 minutes later, there was an uncomfortable silence that went through the camp as we ate, thanks to the saddening aura that Naruto was emitting. So, how did you ruin your clothes, Rias-san? Questioned Jiraiya as we sat around a campfire. I stopped as I was about to take a bit from my fish and scratched the back of my head. I kind of destroyed them. The old man blinked. Really? Why did you destroy your own clothes? Because she ran away from her own wedding, Ero Sennin. Now drop it, I don't think she's comfortable talking about it. This was the first real comment Naruto said in the 10 minutes he's been in camp, which was good in her opinion. Jiraiya had tried talking to him a small bit, for him only reply with 1 or 2 word comments. Thank you, Naruto-san. I smiled at him as he gave a small one back. He soon finished his meal and stood up, looking better but still upset about something. Ero Sennin, I am going to train for a bit. Please don't harass our guest. Jiraiya grabbed his chest in an exaggerated manner. Naruto, you hurt me. Why would I do anything bad to this beautiful maiden? Because you're a perv, and the old man looked like he was just shot. Naruto started to move out the camp as Jiraiya keep on mumbling about ungrateful Gaki and super pervert. But as soon as Naruto seemed to be out of earshot, the older man looked at me with the similar look from earlier. So, Rias-san, what are you planning? I was a bit worried when he said that. What do you mean? Naruto said you ran away from your own wedding, and I am not a fool. The only people I know who run from events like that are those who are forced into it. May it be that they are in an arranged marriage or are under threat from something. So what is it? I let out my breath I didn't even know I was holding. I had thought he had thought I was a threat. After Hagoromo-sama told me about the dangers here, I was a bit jumpy. Arranged marriage, I answered. He nodded. So, in that case you're a noble? Because I have never heard of the Gremory clan before, and arranged marriages are illegal for normal people like me, and you do not hold yourself as someone of our status. I was surprised when he said that. Jiraiya was a very observant person, I could tell, but I didn't know it till then that he was that observant. So, I gave a half-truth. I am not from the here. Someone helped me get here through teleportation magic. I knew it wasn't magic, but I had no idea what else to call it. But he raised an eyebrow. Okay, then first, where are you from? Who sent you here and why? I didn't know why he believed me, but I wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth and gave a half-truth. I was sent here by a man called Otsutsuki Hagoromo from my home Japan. All he asked me to do was to help someone. Help who? I let out a small laugh. I would tell you if I knew. He said only to help someone from losing their way. Jiraiya frowned and hummed. You can stay with us, but I need your help. And would I stay with you? While Naruto has been kind to me, you have been quite unpleasant. At this point I was becoming angry. This man was something else. Well, you have nowhere to go, and, besides me and Naruto, you have no idea where you are, or you would have started walking away at this point. And whoever this Hagoromo fella is, left you to find someone, who, by the way, you have no clue who they are, Or where they are. So yes, you're probably going to stay with us, and I gritted my teeth because of this. He held all the cards. I let out a sigh. Fine. What do you want my help with? Naruto. I want you to help Naruto. I paused. Maybe Naruto was possibly the person who Hagoromo sent me to help. Jiraiya did say that something happened to him recently, and it would have been odd to send me to help someone with no idea who and where they are, so it seemed like he sent me straight to them. Okay, it'll help, he smiled and replied, thank you. I let out a sigh and breathed in, if I may be so bold to ask. Why does he need help? I asked. He let out a sigh. A few months ago, Naruto went on a mission to rescue his friend. I blinked. Is that why he's upset? Did he fail? Yes, he failed, but that's not the reason he's become like this. You see, his friend, a boy named Sasuke Uchiha, didn't want rescuing, and he ran away to join a very dangerous criminal named Orochimaru, wanted for murder and human experimentation of hundreds, maybe thousands of people. I was in shock. Why would anybody want to join a monster like that? Power, Rias-san. Power. You see, Orochimaru, although a criminal, is one of the strongest and most intelligent shinobi in the world, and you would be surprised on how charismatic he can be, are dangerous when he needs to be. Part of me wanted to sequel a bit. These people were shinobi, but I kept calm. I didn't want to look freaky and it wasn't the right time. But why does this Sasuke fellow want power? He wants vengeance, but that's not what's important right now. You see, Naruto went with a team to bring back Sasuke but was soon facing him alone after Naruto's team had to deal with several of Orochimaru's goons who were trying to bring Sasuke to their master. I started to get a picture of what happened. This Sasuke resisted, didn't he? Jiraiya nodded. Got it in one. He even nearly killed Naruto, but that was not what made Naruto distant as of late. The Gaki is quite hard to piss off, but after Sasuke left, Orochimaru wanted to make sure he stayed with him. From what I could gather, he was worried that spoilt Gaki may run from him after he got what he wanted, so he decided to do something. So, something happened to him that in turn hurt Naruto? I guessed. Again, no. Orochimaru wants him to be intact, with the only thing at this time benefiting Sasuke. Hurting him is the last thing on his mind. Then what then? Orochimaru was worried that Sasuke may run back to Konoha, our village, not an unreasonable thought given his representative and the Uchiha's attitude, so he came up with a plan. Make it so he can't go back. Jiraiya then closed his eyes and let out a tired sigh. Naruto told me that in his fight with Sasuke, that damn Uchiha was giving his all to kill him, but was unlucky thanks to another factor. But he said the final blow of the battle was something different. Both had a moment where they could deal to take the other down. Sasuke took it and shoved a Chidori through his chest, but Naruto did something more symbolic. While I wanted to know what this factor was or how Naruto survived having something shoved into his chest, I could help but wonder, something symbolic? He scratched his Hitai-8. I gave a questioning look to the old man as he recognized that well, I didn't know what he was on about. They are symbols of loyalty to one's home, given to shinobi when they finish their basics and pass their tests, and if a Hitai-8 is scratched, it means more often than not that the wearer is a missing nin, a traitor to one's countrymen. I nodded as he continued. But that's beside the point. About a month ago, Orochimaru decided that Sasuke must prove that he was loyal, or at the very least not going to betray him anytime soon, so he sent Sasuke and few of his troops out to do a test. This doesn't end well, does it? I didn't need to be all-knowing to where this was going. Jiraiya with a grim look nodded. Indeed, Sasuke and Orochimaru's goons attacked and captured one of our village's team, where Sasuke was then tasked to prove himself. How? By executing a girl that was quite close to him and Naruto. He paused as he looked me in the eye. Her name was Hinata Hyuga, and her murder changed everything. Flashback end. No Pav. The room was silent as a depressing aura went around the room. So, Naruto-san was depressed and wanted revenge? Questioned Kiba quietly to himself. But Naruto heard him. Yes and no, Kiba. Sasuke was my friend, even after he tried to kill me and I was close to Hinata. Imagine losing something precious to buy something just as. Part of me wanted lash out and destroy everything Sasuke wanted, to make him suffer. But Hinata wouldn't wanted that. She wouldn't have wanted me to become that, he finished somberly. Riser just scoffed. So, you became depressed because your lover was killed because you couldn't bring yourself kill a traitor *phh*. Pathetic. Before he could try to be smug or say anything, he grabbed his cheek in pain as he felt blood run past his fingers from a gust that passed him a second spoke. He turned to look what hurt him to see a kunai embedded deeply into the wall. I'd advise you be quite Riser, warned Rias, her hand extended in a throwing manner. You was this Hinata Hyuga your lover, Naruto-san? Questioned Asia. Although she wasn't the best at reading situations, even she could tell that if Riser didn't stop talking, well, He wouldn't be alive in the next 5 minutes, healing factor or not. No, but we were close friends since the Kumo incident. Kumo? Incident? A second of confusion came to Naruto's face until he facepalmed. Sorry, forgot you are from around here. Kumo is another village in a different country. The incident I am talking about is just when this village just signed a peace treaty with them, ending a costly war. I won't go into much detail, but the ambassador who was sent here to be represented in the peace talks had a secret agenda given to him by the back then Third Reikage, to kidnap a member of the main Hyuga family so they can gain their bloodline. Bloodline? Rias answered her. Bloodlines are special abilities that pass on from generation to generation in certain families, like my power of destruction. That deplorable insect, commented Ravel only to blush afterwards when a large chunk of the room looked at her. Naruto smiled and sighed. I wish I could say that was the worst, but this happened when we were only both 5 at the time. Besides Rias, who already knew this information, the others looked disgusted, but before anyone could speak, Riser again interrupted. Can we get back on track? I care little about old news. Rias and Naruto became silent as killer's intent came off them in droves, making the other occupants in the room worry. What are you doing, you blasted fool? Zeoticus panicked. Even if he himself didn't care for this, about this girl, he knew that pissing off someone with his son-in-law strength was not good for their health, especially given that he could somehow stop Riser's own healing ability. How Naruto could do that was still a mystery at this point, but that wasn't important at the moment. He did not want his death to happen just because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. But before the two could make Riser suffer, Issei interrupted. Hate to say this about Riser, but he's kinda right, we're getting off track, but Rias-senpai can still beat him if she wants, I'll hold him down for you. Well, at least he knew which side that pawn was on. The couple stopped and started to sit back down as Riser smirked, for all of 2 seconds when a fist hit his face, which sent him flying into the wall. Riser-sama! Shouted some of his peerage as they either checked on their master or got ready to fight. But the person that hit Riser, Naruto, was just stretching his smiling. Ah, that was refreshing. Sakura-chan, could you fix up that punching bag for me? Don't worry, I won't break it anytime soon. Sakura shook her head as she went to the blonde devil as Naruto went back to his seat with Rias, who looked approvingly at the damage. Naruto-san, could you please stop assaulting my son? Asked Lord Phoenix carefully. Riser may have been hard to deal with as of late, but he was still his son. Sure. If he learns some manners, and he should be thankful he got off with just a punch. Oh. And why is that? Because if he said that to a fair number of people in this village, he would have just been killed, and quite possibly you too. The room went ice cold in those words, and it wasn't thanks to Graphia. Naruto gained a serious look on his face. I don't think most of you have got it yet, so I guess I'll have lay it out for you. You are a guest here in my village and my home, so I'll treat you as guests. If you make a say something accidentally that offends my family or my people, I'll try to help mitigate it. The room became colder than before. Some of the group looked at Rias as if to ask to reel in her husband, but got no luck. In fact, she looked like she was approving of this. He continued, that said, insulting my village or its people are unacceptable. Living or dead, I will not tolerate it, and neither will they. You maybe consider yourselves superior to humans or other species in your world, but here you're only strangers that think the world owes you something. You're wrong. Here you're nothing, so this is your only warning. Do not anger me, my family or my village. As he finished, the room was quiet, some in the room nervous, others horrified. It had just hit them like a dragon. They had no power here. Right, shall we continue? Questioned Rias, acting like nothing happened as she took a sip of tea. The group, not trusting their voices, collectively nodded. All right then. Flashback, Rias Pav. It had been 2 weeks since I met the odd duo, and it opened my eyes to so many things in that short time. First was that Naruto and Jiraiya were powerful, Jiraiya more so. Whenever the two trained, it was always a sight to be seen from Naruto creating an army of clones doing odd exercises that break the very laws of physics, like walking on water, or walking up a vertical suffice like gravity was optional. It was a sight behold. It didn't help some of the things Jiraiya taught seemed to mess with spacetime. From what he called it, Fuinjutsu was basic practice. But this lead to the second thing I learned, Naruto. He was complicated at this point. Before him, Jiraiya told me a bit about him. That he could be bit loud, loyal and blunt, a bit like a shonen hero, but at this point Naruto was different. Whenever Naruto trained with Jiraiya, he would eventually ask his sensei to teach him more advanced and dangerous techniques, but Jiraiya would refuse. Jiraiya told me before that Naruto would do the same before, ask him to be taught some cool and powerful jutsu, only to have denied and accepted after a witty or insulting comment. But now? Naruto would shout and nearly threaten his sensei, trying to get as strong as possible or he would be silent. gaining a look that reminded me of my peerage when they remembered their pasts. That said, when Naruto wasn't in that state, he was pleasant to be around. He was kind and always trying to help, and to be fair, I did have experience with people who had it rough. Which led to Jiraiya's plan. You see, Jiraiya told me I had a lot of chakra, which spooked me at first from the stories I heard when I was a child, but eventually calmed down, so, we decided that I was to be trained by Naruto. The plan was twofold. I try and help Naruto, he gets me strong enough to protect myself. Simple plan that kills two birds with one stone, but the execution? Well. Come on, Rias-chan. Just 2 more miles, it was hell. Since I started training with Naruto, I have felt pain where I didn't even know I had from all the physical training he put me through. But I also learned how to gain access to my chakra, and it was exhilarating to say the least. Getting back on topic, after I gained my chakra, Naruto had me rush the basics and help me get physically up to a level where I won't be a liability. Just give me second, Naruto. I gasped out as I caught my breath, and I thought my training of Issei was extreme. He made that look like a walk in the park. Naruto looked at her for a second and then sighed. Okay, 5 minutes. I sighed in relief and sat by one of the trees in the clearing we were training in. Jiraiya wasn't with us today since he had apparently important matters in the town we were close to. Something about a contact having important information about a someone. Both me and Naruto asked who, but got no response other than had be gone for a while. My thoughts were broken as Naruto sat next to me. You're doing quite well, Rias-chan. Most people who just started their training don't do this well. Thank you. But I do remember telling you that I do have some combat experience. He smirked at me as we sat in silence and looked around the area. It was quite pleasant looking back, full and lush trees surrounding us and beautiful flowers dotting the clearing with not even one patch of dead grass in sight. Which made this part more difficult. Naruto-san, how are you feeling? He looked at me with a slight panic and suspicion. I am fine, Rias-chan. Why do you ask? Well, you have been a bit odd. I took a deep breath. This was it. Well, from what Jiraiya-sama told me, you've been acting different as of late, and since you helped me, I thought it only right to help you. Naruto just looked at me, his eye narrowing as seconds passed. What did he tell you? What did he tell you? He interrupted, his voice colder this time. I paused, feeling uneased at his tone. I hadn't ever heard him that tone at this point. With slight nervousness in my voice, I answered, everything. He looked at me exasperated and let out a breath. Kami, damn it, Jiraiya-sensei. You know he just want to help you, right? I know, Rias-chan, but he should have asked you. And what about me? I want to help. Why? He shouted. I nearly flinched but stayed strong. Because you helped me, and you're hurting. I was lost and alone and you helped me when you didn't need to. You're a kind person, Naruto-san, and I want you to stay that. He was quiet for a minute, leaving a tense feeling in the air. I once thought him as a brother, no, Sasuke. I didn't know that. Jiraiya-sama, only that you were close. He let out a small laugh. Looks like he didn't tell you everything. He probably didn't want to scare you. Sasuke, Hinata, and I were close, very close. All 3 of us were brought together thanks to our desire to no longer be alone. Alone. That brought up something I felt for the time I've been here. I am an orphan. I don't think me or Ero Sennin told you that. My parent died in the Kyuubi tragedy the night I was born. Kami, I don't even know their names, so I try to make friends whenever possible. You can say I was the creator of our little trio. Sasuke became my friend after his family was killed. Not that you'd be able to tell at times. We'd fight from time to time, but it was all in good spirit. And finally, Hinata, you know, when I first meet her and when I found out she was from the Hyuga clan and its heiress too. I thought she was going to be a stuck-up rich kid. Boy, did that change after her mouth opened. She was shy, nervous and always critical of herself. Something I didn't expect. Turned out her clan was expecting of her, for Hinata to be a powerful and perfect Hyuga. Instead they got a sweet girl who didn't like fighting. I'd call that an improvement, but her father and most of her clan would disagree with me. Kami, the only reason I was allowed near her was because I accidentally saved her. As I looked at him, he closed his eyes and let out a sigh full of nostalgia. It wasn't hard for us to become close. When one of us would fall, we would pick each other up. If Sasuke's ego got too big, I'd smack him about. If I lagged behind, they come back and push me further, and if Hinata lost confidence in herself, Wed made sure she found some more. It's funny how thing was compared to now. Sound like you were good friends. Naruto smiled, not his playful or fake one but an honest smile. I'd like to think we were. The clearing was silent after that, with only the sound of nature to accompany our thoughts. Rias-chan, are you crying? I looked at him as I felt my cheeks were wet. I was crying but didn't realize it. I guess I am. I said quietly. He came a bit closer to me and put his hand on my shoulder. As he gave a smile to comfort me, I let out a small laugh. You know I meant to be helping you, not you helping me. Ah, never been one to listen to people anyways, so, what's wrong? As brought my knees closer to me, I became honest with him. When you talked about how you, Sasuke and Hinata became friends, I couldn't help but think of what I left behind. Naruto looked at me questioning, but didn't you say you ran away from your wedding with that Riser guy? Yeah, I did. After a few days I had told the odd duo about why I ran. Not everything like my devilhood, but enough to get an idea. Funny enough, the two seemed more angered at Riser, as well as mine and his families, when I told them. Jiraiya going so far as to say that even some of the heartless nobles he had met would have called off the wedding in a moment notice after meeting Riser, after telling them what he was like. I guess you let something behind? Naruto questioned, no more stated. Yes, my peerage, my bother, and, I guess, my mother. You guess. Mother always seemed to be against the wedding, even though she never really did anything to stop it, but before I left I said some cruel things to her. And you regret saying it? No. I mean, yeah, kind of. For a good amount of my life I've felt that my life has been dictated by others telling me to be myself but never allowing me to. Hell, the person who helped me escape told me I had to do a favor for him. He looked at me questioning what favor. Something I hope to complete. It's personal. Shaking his head, he returned to the previous subject. So, you feel homesick then? A little, but it's more me realizing that I can't go back, even if I wanted to. My friends, my family, I'll probably never see them again. For hell's sake, I never had a chance to say goodbye. As my tears fell harder down my face, Naruto gently pulled me into a hug. A small part of me wanted to resist, not because any form of dislike or idea of a professional relationship, but of fright. I knew how Naruto felt about those abandoning people, especially when they're close. But the larger part of me, that wanted someone to be with. It's hard, isn't it, not being able to say goodbye? As I teary nodded, I spoke quietly. I am sorry, I just. You don't want to be alone? He interrupted with his question. No, it was a statement. I was quiet after he said that, my silence being enough for him as he held me closer as I brought my head into his shoulder. We held each not as a lovers or family, but as someone to share our grief with, soon leaving only the sound of nature around us to go with our thoughts. Naruto-kun? Can I ask you something? He pushed me back slightly to look at me better, of course. Promise you won't leave. I know it's selfish, but not wanting to be alone is not selfish, he interrupted, and if it is, then I guess we both are, because I promise you that I won't leave. I smiled at him, feeling a warmth in me I hadn't felt since before Riser came and ended my old life. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I know I am not a replacement for your friends and I don't want to be, but I promise you I won't let you get hurt anymore. As he began to smile back at me, a bond was formed, one that neither of us knew how far it would go or where it would lead, but it was that moment I came to a conclusion. The choice I made to become free was one I could live with. Flashback over. No Pav. As Rias and Naruto finished the story smiling at one another, as they did, the room had a different atmosphere about it. Ah, so romantic, whispered one of Riser's peerage, much to his displeasure, but a good amount of people in the room agreed to it. Not that romantic, whispered Issei as he looked to the wooden floor, a bit put off how the couple bonded. How was he meant to bring Rias back with them? Rias, not hearing him, responded to the comment, giggle looking back. Yes, but back then we were just happy to have a shoulder to lean on. Still, as Rias began to talk to the others, Naruto look out the window, it getting late. How about I send a Kage Bushin to grab the kids and get our dinner? Rias stopped for a second. She nodded her head at Naruto as he made a hand sign making two clones. This confused Rias and the others. Naru-koi. Why did you make two clones? One for the kids and ramen. The other is to show our guests to their rooms. I think it's a good time to unpack. Asia blinked. Uzumaki-san, does that mean you have our luggage? Hi, and call me Naruto. Any friend of Benny Haim never needs to be formal with me. Asia smiled at him as the others were just happy their stuff wasn't damaged in their journey. I guess you don't need me anymore then, I'll get going, said Sakura as she moved from her spot. Actually, Sakura-chan, could we talk to you for a moment? Interrupted Rias. Everybody in the room looked at the two in question, wondering. Rias-senpai, why do you need to talk to Sakura-san? Wondered Issei. Nothing to worry about, Issei. Now Naru-koi, could you show our guest where they are staying? Hi. Now everybody please follow the clones. The group soon followed the clones, some more reluctant than others, but eventually left the room, leaving the three alone. Okay, what did you want to talk about? Rias gave her a flat look. Sakura-san, do you remember that we had an appointment today? Sakura paused for a second then face-palmed. Sorry with everything that happened today. I forgot about that. Come to think of it, I am more surprised you didn't ask me to check before the meet and greet. Naruto then gave her a look. We'd rather be both here when the results are given. She sighed. Alright, lift your shirt, Rias-san, with the devils, no POV. As Venelana and the others followed one of the clones that were going to show them where they would be staying, she listened to the others, hearing them talk about what they just heard. This is bullshit. And she could tell that some were not happy. Riser-sama, calm down, said Yubaluna as she tried and failed to calm her king down. No. Who does this guy think he is? I was promised to her and not some lowlife human. You do know I am right here, right? Responded Naruto's clone flatly. Nobody was talking, you peasant. As there were grumbles talking about Naruto, Rias and everything, she couldn't help but think about everything up to this point. The arrangement, the rating game and that farce of a wedding. Looking back, she couldn't help but think how different it could have been if she just said no. Yes. A shout reverberated through the house, breaking any train of thought and convocation. What was that? Questioned Issei. Good news by the sounds of it, mumbled the clone. What? Venelana questioned as she stared at the clone, who seemed to have a sly look on his face. Congratulations, we have a new family member on the way, said the clone as he looked at Riser with a grin on his face. The group stopped. What? As the clone just smiled, the group froze once more and soon reenacted the scene that happened earlier today. Shock, anger, and most importantly, Venelana fainting, and her last thought. Thanks for watching.